There we go. Hey, folks. My bad. I was trying to take care of some business and stuff was not coming together. So we had to get some stuff right. All right. Um, yeah, so there's a lot happening. Let me get in a few hellos and we'll just jump right into it real quick. Let me see my chat here. Let's pray that my live does not start fumbling because anytime we start having some real discussion, that's when everything starts to act weird on here. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so let's see. What's up, Sarah? Look, Sarah be dedicated, be the first one. Let's see. Somebody said this is about to be a depressing lot. Nah, I mean, we're gonna talk real stuff, but I'm not sitting in doom and gloom. I don't have the bandwidth for it, so nah. What up, Raywin? Somebody said, "I broke Calvin. When are you gonna make some more music videos of your album?" It's in the plans. We getting there. It's been a very eventful year, personally. I know my 2024 was very eventful because I released the 2 albums. We did a short film. I did a bunch of stuff. There's been some other things I've been kind of tied into. So it's killing me to not really push my albums the way I would like to. But I'm almost over this really big hurdle. So I'll kind of have some free time and energy and bandwidth to actually like push the stuff now. So when I start promoting these projects, I don't want to hear nothing either, right? So there's that. But some folks are like, oh my God, I want to hear his stuff. Too bad, it's my channel. Let's see. TFF for Life said, glad Calvin did just an only pop culture positive live first. Yeah, I enjoy doing that. We'll kind of balance it out a bit. This one will not be super positive. We will talk music at the very end like I normally do, but it's some other topics to discuss. Let's see. That's a great question. Let's see. I'll come back to that one later. All right. Anyway, let me just go ahead and jump into a few things while people get on a few more minutes, I guess. So like I said, I've been kind of like traveling, doing a few different things. We did Puerto Rico a few weeks back. I just came back from Miami because I went to ABFF, American Black Film Festival. That was a really great time. Shout out to you, Amanda, by the way. Amanda is one of our great subscriber friends on the channel, and she actually was working the festival. She was just very, very welcoming, good energy, great conversation. Because she was somebody that was kind of managing and working the festival, she had all the inside scoop on all, which events to go to. And it's just always really good when you kind of catch up with people. It's cool when you run into subscribers because then you can almost like have real conversations about the stuff we talk about. So that was really, really cool. So nice meeting you, Amanda. Now, let me tell you, my beef with Miami, though. Now, that was my second time to Miami. I went last year because our film was in the Urban Film Festival. And I didn't get to enjoy Miami the first time I went because that was when I was recovering from being sick. Like when I lost like the 20 pounds. And that was literally a week and a half after I was able to finally eat food again. And so I couldn't really enjoy Miami because I couldn't really eat a lot of things. I was like sticking to water and, I couldn't really experiment with the food. And so this go round, we're all good now, right? Health is good. So I was ready to have a time in Miami. And I forgot how expensive it is. Man, we went to this restaurant and I will eat anything that comes out of the sea. And so I was like, oh, I want the octopus, right? I forgot that when you go to these restaurants, and Miami is because we were in South Beach. Like the first time we went to Miami, we were in like Liberty City, Brickell side. This time we were in South Beach. South Beach is all tourist aesthetic presentation. So when you go and get food, you're going to leave hungry. And we went to one spot. I ordered the octopus because I'm like, you know what? I do like some octopus and everything like that. And they gave me this one little tentacle about this big, $50. I said, Lord, okay. And what pissed me off about it is, octopus got like 8 tentacles, and the ones I see on like the Discovery Channel, the tentacles are like as big as my arm. But then they come and give me this little thing here, and then they put all these little sauces and stuff around the plate, and little bits and pieces of parsley and stuff that you can't even really eat for the decor. So the plate looks full, but it's one little piece of meat, $50. I was so pissed. And then the drinks are like $25. So I had a very sober experience in Miami. I was so pissed. I was like, there's nothing more triggering than going somewhere hungry and you leave still hungry. Between that and when I go to a restaurant and they have anything that's a la carte, like a la carte pisses me off so bad, especially in DC, because DC has a bunch of restaurants like that too, which is why I prefer to eat in Baltimore, because they will fill you up. These DC restaurants, everything is a la carte. So you get, a la carte is just, here's the meat, but you got to order your own sides. Then the sides be $15, $16. and don't even be hitting right. Like, don't piss me off with food. So that was my only beef. But no, I still had a great time. And then one of the restaurants we were at, because since Miami's like right, South Beach is like right on the water. They have a lot of restaurants that are very outdoorish. Some are kind of like not even in real buildings. They just almost are in like gazebos. And we were getting to one spot, and I remember I was pulling out my chair, and I thought somebody had put their hand on my shoulder. And so I'm like, okay, whoever that is touchy-feely. So when I look back, it's a whole squirrel that has jumped on my back and is just sitting there. I'm like, what? And it made me think of the guy on Instagram. I don't know the name of his channel, but he's like the squirrel whisperer. He'd be talking to all the squirrels, and they, he done built whole houses and stuff at his apartment, and all the squirrels be coming from the trees and hanging out. That's what it kind of felt like. Now, I'm not somebody who's scared of animals or nothing, so it just kind of threw me off. I was like, what the heck? And I guess because of where the restaurant was located, it's just one of those squirrels that's not afraid of people because it probably hangs around there and gets all the table scraps. I was just like, y'all got a lot going on down here. Y'all got a lot going on. All right. By the way, I just want y'all to know I was supposed to be at Afram in Baltimore tonight because Patti LaBelle's performing, but I said we got to get this live. And so I'm missing Patti, by the way. Just want y'all to know. All right, let's go ahead talk some real stuff, shall we? This is water, by the way. Just want y'all to know. Okay. So we're going to start right with Iran. Okay, here we go. Before I even jump into anything, I just kind of want to establish that in all reality, the people are tired, right? We're always getting pulled into something we didn't ask to be pulled into. There's always somebody up top who has the big boogeyman story about whatever's happening, and then we get dragged into it, and then here comes years of more conflict and instability and tax dollars going to any and everything. And at this rate, in reality, most people just want job stability, good health, and safety. Can we be honest? That's really what most people want. Just job stability, good health, and safety. People want peace of mind. People want to be left alone. People don't want to have to feel like they're worried about what's to come next. It's just like people are tired of kind of living on this seesaw of extremities and chaos, especially when we're already living in an era of extremities and chaos. And so the thing that always gets me is that things in this country could be so good. We really could just do so much because clearly the resources are there, right? There's never resources for the things that matter, but we always got money to go blow up some stuff all the time. And what I've noticed, especially over the last 20 years, is we've watched other countries really invest in their people. We've watched so many countries really get into a space where countries that were once mocked 20 and 30 years ago, we're now looking to as almost the beacons of light when it comes to what's next in the future. We're looking at these places as the new leaders of innovation and intellect and trying new things. And I think what is kind of messing things up here is like the U.S. as a whole has stopped doing that. And I mean, really, once we got into that conversation of desegregation, that's really when the U.S. stopped investing in the people, because instead they found more ways to pretty much oppress Black folks, keep other marginalized groups of people beneath the demographic of white Americans, and then again, jump into every military action in the world for U.S. interests. That's kind of where we've been. And so what I always find so interesting, like I said, other countries will invest in their people, the United States does not. And when we're looking at what the current budget that's being proposed is doing, none of that is for the people. That is all for specific interests, lining the pockets of the super wealthy and disenfranchising everybody else. The rest of us are collateral. And so when you talk about the $430 billion in cuts that have taken place as a result of DOGE and just executive order and everything, mind you, this is a $430 billion that was already line itemed and approved by Congress in 2024. This is money that was supposed to be spent. It's been approved. Orange Man and Cruz said, no, we pulling it. And so that's money that was for the people. But anyway, we got money to do parades and stuff that nobody went to. I was so glad to not be in D.C. for that crap. I was in Miami at the time, but I heard, it was the military, posing it as a celebration of the military, when in reality, it was kind of a self-gratification event for Orange Man, and nobody showed up. Waste of money. But again, we want to cut things. I just want to, before I really get into Iran, I just want us to take note of so many of the things that we've cut and so many of the things that, have gotten the chopping block with this new administration as of January 20th of 2025, right? So we've cut critical research in Alzheimer's disease. We've cut research into women's health, cancer, diabetes. We've already talked about sickle cell, right? We already talked about that. We talked about what's happening with a lot of the pauses with the cancer trials and things that lead to cures and some of the research that's taken place. We've seen what they've done with the NIH. We've seen what they've done with public safety. We've seen them cut COP grants. We've seen them cut the grants when it comes to violence against women. We've seen them cut grants for helping victims of violent crime. We've seen them pretty much gut FEMA because now they want to claim that they want to leave the power to the states when it comes to natural disasters. Farmers and local agricultural businesses are struggling because of different cuts. And again, it's making it more expensive for hardworking people to run their farms because corporations are kind of taking over a lot of the farms that we have in the U.S. and a lot of the programs that used to benefit American farms are being cut and gutted. We know that they're cutting school lunches. We know that they're cutting childcare institutions as far as the funding that they're receiving. Head Start is being cut, right? Head Start was already struggling to begin with, but now they said they're just going to cut a little bit more, right? Critical investments to infrastructure and transportation, projects that have already been approved. We're watching them cut funding from different projects where we literally have airports, bridges, roads that are in the middle of construction projects that are currently on pause because stuff is in litigation in the courts to get reapproved because there have been more and more cuts. That includes ports, that includes energy projects across the country. That also, and the thing about that is all of those infrastructure projects created new jobs, right? But this is all out of spite. This is all to undo what the past administration was trying to get done. We know national security has pretty much been gutted and cut, which is really funny because now we're over here blowing up countries. Let me see here. I'm not going to go over all this stuff. Again, conversations around reproductive rights, health, public, everything, vaccination, all that crap, cut, right? Anything under the sun you can think of, right? And even what's even crazier too, because we're so pro-military in this country, but we just, pulled $2 billion in VA grants for the VA, in addition to wanting to get rid of 80,000 VA employees when the VA is already understaffed. For those who are military vets, they can tell you as much as they appreciate the VA and its free services, the VA is not the most easy experience to go through whenever you need some kind of surgery or anything because there's a long wait list. There's long delays for services. And it's just because we have so many veterans that need the services, but there aren't enough resources to make it happen. So rather than investing into our VA to make it a better and more sustainable, business model so that people can actually be served, we said we're just going to cut some more, right? As if we're not going to continue to get an abundance of veterans who are coming back, who are wounded, who have whatever kind of issues they have going. In addition to the fact that a lot of veterans did not know about the benefits that were available until years after they've been out of the military. And so we also had that influx of veterans who are in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s, who are just now discovering, oh, there's different benefits that I qualify for. And so you have all these demographics of people who are trying to just get their foot in the door and make do with what they have to just be all right, and we're cutting all that. Anyway, so getting back to the actual Iran situation. So how it's always worked and what we've always seen, I had to just type this out. Normally, y'all know I'd be carrying my piece of paper, but I was like, when I was writing, my hand was cramping. I was like, I'll just type. By the way, this will be the longest segment of the live. So if you ain't really trying to hear about Iran, come back in like 40 minutes. All right. Anyway, but we're often spoon-fed these very questionable assessments coming from the leadership, right? And a lot of times the stories don't even add up. And it's the same narrative that we've always been kind of fed since the Cold War. It's always about somebody who's the boogeyman that hates our freedom. They hate the freedom of us in the United States because we just have it so good over here that the rest of the world is jealous. And they not only hate it, but they want to destroy us. And because they want to destroy us because they hate the freedom that we have, they're building these crazy weapons to come and destroy us. Because again, they wake up every day. All of the other 7+ billion people in the world who don't live in the United States, all of them hate us. They hate us so much they wake up every day thinking of how to kill us, right? That's the narrative that's put out there. And so they put out the narrative that they're creating some big giant weapon that's going to destroy us and wipe us off the face of the earth. If that's not the narrative, the other narrative is, oh, there's somebody who needs our help. There's somebody who's under distress, and as a country, it's our duty to go and protect everybody in the world. So we must go out there and protect them. That's how we ended up in Iraq. Because remember, Operation Enduring Iraqi Freedom, right? That's kind of the narrative that's out there. And so what's interesting is you see these different narratives about how everybody is so terrible, but we're living in the United States, witnessing what's happening here. And the funniest thing, I saw the clip that was going viral of The View, where Alyssa was talking about the justification as to why we may need to go into Iran. And she was talking about the atrocities and the civil rights violations that exist in Iran. And I'm like, I hear that. But here in the United States, it's not Disneyland and sprinkles and a good time over here either. Like, did we not just see this story with Adriana Smith, the woman who was brain dead after, well, she was 9 weeks pregnant. Something happened. She ended up being brain dead. But because of Georgia's law with regard to reproductive rights and the gutting of Roe v. Wade, they made this woman who was no longer alive, practically, she was, on life support, carry a baby for an additional 4 months, right? And then they do the C-section, and as soon as the baby comes out, then they take the lady off life support and let her die. That's where we're living. So the idea of trying to paint Iran to be whatever they are, first of all, it's not whimsical over here. You're watching random people go and get snatched up off the street, all in the name of immigration, when in reality, you're seeing people who pretty much are pardoned January 6ers running around with masks and glasses on, going and kidnapping anybody who's not white. Because now we're seeing actual citizens get detained and almost get deported. We're seeing just almost anything goes. We're seeing all kinds of civil rights be gutted, reversed, undone. We're seeing protections get thrown away. We're seeing any and everything under the sun that is terrible become normalized here. But then somebody like Alyssa wants to pretend that Iran is so terrible that somehow whatever issues they have over there justifies us possibly jumping into a war. That's not how that works. Because if that's the case, that means many countries have a right to come over here and invade us out of the atrocities that are taking place against Black folks, that are taking place against other marginalized groups of people in this country, if that's the case. So cut the crap. But anyway, this is where the challenge runs when it comes to those who are in charge. It's not 1996 anymore. Many Americans are not as, I don't want to say gullible, but that idea of painting that boogeyman to kind of fear, get everybody fearful and get behind whatever the government wants to do, that doesn't really connect anymore because there's so many people who have been here long enough to see cause and effect. There's so many people at this point who have seen and heard these narratives so many times before, and they've seen what the United States decided to jump into, and they've seen the end result. They've seen how we went to Iraq and had over 800,000 civilians get killed, all in the name of enduring their freedom, but then somehow correlating Iraq to Saddam Hussein and somehow saying, well, he had something to do with the weapons of mass destruction that somehow influenced Al-Qaeda over in Afghanistan with Osama bin Laden, and that's how everybody died in 9/11. Like, they will tie all of this stuff together, paint everybody on that side of the world to be the boogeyman, and then run all these different political ads on TV to get everybody to buy in. But times have changed, mainly because you also have the addition of social media, right? And so we're now in this space where, because of social media, those in leadership and mainstream media are no longer the gatekeepers of information. A lot of times, the general public can get information long before it's reported. Think back to the plane crash in January, right? The plane crash right here in D.C., where the commercial airliner crashed with the military helicopter. Let me slow down, right? By the time anything was even announced on mainstream media, as far as the news outlets, as far as CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, if you want to consider them a news outlet, ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, social media had already figured everything else out. The people on Twitter had already figured out that no, there's not just a random small aircraft incident in the DC area, because initially it was like, oh, there might have been a small aircraft that crashed into the water. And so the narrative was like, oh, it might just be like a small little Cessna or something, but there are no Cessnas that fly in the airspace over here. So that's not happening, right? Twitter finds out, not only that, they figure out, boom, it's a commercial airliner. They figure out, boom, what airline it's from. They figure out exactly the airline flight and the route that it was going to. They were able to pull right into the NSTB or whoever it is. I don't know who it is, but there's the different sites you can go to where you can track the flights and see what had landed and so on and so forth, and how they figured out that there was a commercial airliner that had somehow blown up and crashed into the water after crashing into a helicopter was saying. They looked at the website and it showed that there was a specific flight that had landed. However, there was no record of the flight being at the actual airport. And again, sadly, you have the family members and everybody else at the airport waiting for their loved ones to get there, but there's still no sight of this plane. And then by the time things are finally figured out, it's like, okay, there was actually some kind of accident over, right above the river between the airspace as far as the airport and the Air Force Base. Because people were tweeting saying, hey, I was driving on 295, which is parallel to the river, which is across from the airport. I don't know exactly what I saw. I just saw a huge explosion above me, and I saw a whole bunch of vessels going down into the water. And I think it was a commercial airliner. So all of that was in the span of maybe 35 to 40 minutes. Meanwhile, now I'm living in the city and I'm reading this on Twitter and I'm getting ready to go out at the same time. So I'm like, dang, man, I probably should go a different route because I need to go on that same bridge to go that way. I'm flipping the channels to see if anything's on the news. Celebrity Jeopardy is still on ABC. CNN's still running their regular programming. CBS is running whatever was on at that time. It wasn't The Equalizer because I think that comes on Sundays. But long story short, by the time the media finally tells everything that's out there, social media had already figured it out. So getting to my point, and I say all that to say is the whole idea of kind of pushing the boogeyman narrative doesn't quite work in the same manner, because now with things like social media, people have access to communication to the very people that we're talking about in different regions of the world, where you can literally connect to somebody who's from wherever or whoever. They can tell you exactly what's happening in their neighborhood, so on and so forth, right? That's kind of where we're at. Anyway, and so the other thing is they still kind of move the way that they do, and it's mainly because the average American, especially when we're talking about what happens with the Middle East, the average American does not know what our foreign policy is in the Middle East, right? We're just taught that all of those are bad people. That's literally the move. We're taught that they're bad people. The imaging that's utilized in the media, they love to show images of caves and, you know, lots of brown everything. They never show any kind of elements of greenery, no grass, no trees, no happiness, no joy. Just show raggedy old 1989 Nissans driving through a dirt road and somebody with an AR-15 and a turban and you know, and a camel. That's the imaging the average American gets when it comes to regions like the Middle East. And so you put those kind of images out there, and then you paint them to all be people who only want to blow us up and kill us every single day. Because again, everybody hates our freedom. And so that's kind of what they're, you know, what's painted to us. But at the same time, the average American is not excited to go and jump into any kind of wars. Nobody's trying to send their kids over there every time, especially what we've learned, especially after what we've learned with Afghanistan and what we've learned with Iraq. As far as us going over there and having so many of our own troops and everybody else come back injured, injuries, mental health issues, so on and so forth. An extension of what we saw with the Vietnam War. Nobody wants to keep seeing that. So people aren't really as excited to just jump into wars anymore. You still got the ones who are a little cuckoo and don't care. But when it's all said and done, most people are not excited to kind of jump into a lot of things. And this is one of the reasons why we're starting to see such attacks on things like education and even independent media and what you call the truth. Because we're getting to a space where even within every generation, including the baby boomers, because a lot of the I guess you can say credit as far as people not buying into the BS is always kind of given to millennials and Gen Z. But please believe Gen X is tired of the nonsense, and so are a lot of the baby boomers. Everybody sees through the nonsense at this point. And this is one of the reasons why you're starting to see the attacks on education, the attacks in all of those different elements. And it's because the goal is to recalibrate and kind of reset collective thought on foreign policy and what our government does. And even though it may not necessarily be successful with the current cohort of generations that are here, they can do it with the up and coming ones. So if you can go ahead and set the bar and recalibrate how we present information, how we receive information, and what's told to us about whatever's happening around the world, and kind of present it in a way that, again, makes us look like the hero, makes everybody else look like the bad guy or look like the boogeyman, because that's what we did during the Cold War. That's what we did in the 80s. That's what we did with Afghanistan and Iraq. Again, it's not really working in the same manner in modern times. But again, the generation that comes after Gen Z, they're too young to really understand a lot of things at the moment. So that's the perfect generation to start molding. So if you start chopping away at education, you start chopping away and vilifying all elements of mainstream media and independent media, in addition to buying out our media has already been bought out. You know, a lot of our mainstream media corporations are owned by about 3 or 4 corporations within, you know, in all reality. So which is why most of us get the same news. It's just presented a little bit differently, but it's everybody's saying the same thing most of the time. If you can go and kind of manipulate and buy out our media, change and restructure the narrative within education, you know, gut the truth and paint exactly what it is that people want to be the status quo, you can have an entire generation or two influenced by those in leadership. And then it makes people a little bit more gullible when it comes to jumping into whatever's next. That's kind of where we're at. And we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen again in Afghanistan. We saw it happen with Libya. They did it with Vietnam. They did it with Iraq. And so the thing that's also interesting, I don't think people realize, the United States has had a role in over 81 different elections outside of the United States. Now, this is according to the Partisan Electoral Intervention by the Great Powers data set, PEIG, right? We as a country have performed 81 overt and covert known interventions into foreign elections. In addition to that, and that was between 1946 and 2000. There's no telling what we've done in the last 25 years. And then when you talk about research coming from Lindsay A. O'Rourke, it says that the United States has also, and this is out of the research coming from the strategic logic of covert regime change, U.S.-backed regime change campaigns during the Cold War, the U.S. has engaged in 64 covert and 6 overt attempts at regime change during and after the Cold War. So our hands are in everything. But we will continue, like I said, to make it seem as if everybody is just out to get us and we just be minding our business. We're just here enjoying our freedom and our white picket fences and apple pie, and everybody just hates us and we don't know why. And it's like, no, y'all tie into everything. When you get a chance, please go back to, this was when there was the Muslim ban back in 2017. I did a video about it, but in that specific video, I literally had a scrolling list of every country that we have had some kind of element of invasion or regime change with. It's just scrolling while I'm rambling and talking. Please go back and watch that. But getting to this conversation about the Middle East, I think we need to just paint the bigger picture, right? So can we just explain the region for a moment? Because there's about 16 players to focus on. I'm actually going to share some things here. So give me 1 second. We're going to pull up a map here because we're going to just tell a lovely little story here. So kind of paint exactly what is happening here. Let's see. Hopefully you guys can see my little map here. Let's zoom this in a little bit. Let's see. I want to make sure you guys can see my, okay. Yep. Y'all can see it. Perfect. Okay. So let's go to the map here. All right. Now this is Israel right here. You guys can see this, right? I feel like I'm at work, right? Somebody in the chat, just make sure y'all can see my map here. You can see my map. Somebody say something. Say something. I'm just going to guess that you guys can see it. Okay. So we have Israel, right? This is kind of where things somewhat kick off and start. All right. Perfect. You guys can see it. Love it. So first over here, we have Israel. Now to the left, of course, there's Egypt. Now Egypt and Israel, they're pretty good. They've had a peace treaty since 1979. There's not a lot of smoke between Egypt and Israel. If anything, they kind of cooperate with each other. So that's Egypt, right? Now, when you get over to this side, I need to zoom in a little bit. Hold on. Hold on. I need to zoom. Give me my zoom back. That's not what I want. Hold on. Okay, this is not in the plan. Get it right. Get it right. Give me one. I got to get this right. Okay, here we go. So, all right. So to the north, we have Lebanon. Now, Israel and Lebanon are not friends, right? The U.S. has also invaded Lebanon before. And then we also have Hezbollah. Hezbollah that is also in Lebanon as well, right? Then over to the east, or I'm sorry, yeah, to the east, you have Jordan, right? Now, Jordan and Israel are pretty cool, right? They've had a peace treaty since 1994, right? Then we go further north. We have Syria. Now, Syria and the U.S. or Syria and Israel are not friends. As a matter of fact, the United States has also had operations in Syria. We haven't technically invaded Syria, but we've done a lot of drone events and everything else like that in Syria. Go a little bit further north, we have Turkey, right? Turkey right here. Now, Turkey is a member of NATO, but they're not really that cool with Israel, right? They're also about one step from telling the U.S. where they can go, right? The U.S. and Turkey were cordial, but the relationship is getting a little sparky, right? Then we come a little bit further south, right? Over here to the east, we have Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a country that's kind of just there. They're not really enemies of Israel. They're not allies either. They just know that they also, like Israel, don't really care for Iran. However, they're not willing to go 10 toes down for Israel unless there's a two-state solution with the Palestinians. That's where Saudi Arabia stands. They do not like what it was that Israel and Netanyahu has done with Gaza specifically, right? Then we go over a little bit more to the east, right? We have Iraq. Now, Iraq and Israel have had beef for years. They've been beefing since 48. They've had a few different incidents, one in 1948, one in 1967, and again in 1973. That was during the Israeli-Arab Wars. Now, they are the only Arab country to have not signed a ceasefire agreement with Israel back in 1948. Now, both countries also have what you call invalid passport relations, meaning if you're from Iraq, you can't go to Israel. If you're from Israel, you can't go to Iraq. They are also against the way that Israel moved when it came to everything that happened with Gaza. They also recognize the existence of Palestinians. However, Iraq, because they are in recovery mode from the nonsense that the U.S. did over there, they're kind of keeping it light and bright. Iraq is not really trying to jump into anything anytime soon. Then we have Kuwait, all right? Now, Kuwait, they too have smoke for Israel, right? They too are a country that's like, we don't like what y'all did with the Palestinians. That was real effed up. All right. And they too have the visa situation where, again, if you are from Israel, you cannot go to Kuwait and vice versa. Right. Now we go a little bit further south. So you have Bahrain. Now, Bahrain and Israel, they're kind of friends, but they're not about to jump in too much. OK, but Bahrain is kind of like you get jumped at the club, but your friend was in the bathroom the whole time and missed the whole fight. And you leak it on the sidewalk and then they finally show up. That's Bahrain. they're not jumping into anything. You know, we're cordial, but whatever you do, that's you. Don't bring us in it. We're trying to mind our business over here, right? Then we go a little bit further south. You have Qatar. Now, they really don't F with Israel either, right? And at the same time, they were one of the major lifelines for the Palestinians with everything that was happening with Gaza. They were the ones that were kind of trying to provide aid, provide food, trying to give some element of remedy to what the Palestinians were dealing with, right? Then you have the United Arab Emirates, right? They're pretty cool with Israel, but they don't really have any kind of military cooperation. There's not going to be any, if something happens, we're jumping in. They're kind of just minding their business. The only thing that they do have in common with Israel is that they're a little nervous about Iran. They're not really too friendly with Iran. Then we have Oman down here. Now, Oman also does not really F with Israel, but they do advocate for peace and have been one of the few countries that tried to advocate for what you call mediation between the Israelis and the Palestinians, right? So that's Oman. They kind of just, we don't deal with y'all, but we don't want y'all bringing that mess to our backyard either. So can y'all all just get along, please, right? Then we go a little bit further to what's left of the Arabian Peninsula. You have Yemen. Yemen does not F with Israel, right? But they do, again, actually, they don't mess with Israel at all. And as a matter of fact, they're still in current conflict at the moment. And there have been military strikes between both countries. And the U.S. has also invaded Yemen at one point, right? This brings us to what's leading us to our main discussion. Then we go further east, right? We have Iran. Now, we know Israel and Iran don't get along because they've been blowing each other up all week, right? They fell out after the Iranian revolution back in 1979. In addition to that, when there was the revolution, when there was the Iranian war, the United States decided to supply Iraq with weapons. And it was interesting because the United States was claiming they weren't taking sides, but they were providing weapons to Iraq to go and fight Iran, which ended up being very interesting because then later down the line with the rise of Saddam Hussein, then we're like, oh, Iraq is so dangerous with all these weapons. And I'm like, yeah, it's the weapons y'all gave them. Okay. All right. Awesome. It was the technology you gave them. That's how that works. Right. And then when we go a little bit over, I got to go over here. We have Pakistan, right? Pakistan also does not really F with Israel, right? Now, the U.S. has had a few drone strikes in Pakistan. We've never technically invaded Pakistan, but we've been blowing stuff up over there for a good minute. And then the last one I'm going to highlight, again, is Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan also doesn't really F with Iran either, but this is also another place that we have invaded. Now, let me stop sharing my screen here. Okay, so when you take that element, in addition to that, then you still have Hezbollah, you still have Hamas, and you have, Houthis or Houthis, however you pronounce it. These are different groups that don't really deal with the Israelis as well. And so long story short, this is a very fragile region. This is a region where it's like the movie where everybody has the gun pointed at each other, and all it takes is one person to pull the trigger, and it's going down. That's the Middle East, right? And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there have been countries, the United States and Israel, who have been just poking the bear for years. Just poke, 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 poke. You know, I'm not touching you. Like for years. So that entire region is just kind of on edge and always has been, which is why there's always so much effort to try and, you know, maintain peace. But at the same time, that region has something that everybody wants, you know, the black gold, AKA oil. So you have that element over there. So there's all these different things that are taking place. And so where it gets interesting is, a month ago, Iran was on nobody's radar. Nobody was talking about Iran, nuclear weapon this. Everybody was minding their business, and it was just all a great time. Y'all were preparing for the military parade, so you could watch the troops of the Revolutionary War walk down Constitution Ave or whatever street they're on. And now all of a sudden, we're seeing that familiar card be pulled again, where here we go. Iran has nuclear weapons, and they're so close to making one, and we're about to see the great white flash. And so then we go down the timeline. And again, this is rhetoric that's been said since the 90s. For 33 years, especially with Netanyahu, they've been saying Iran is building nuclear weapons. They're building nuclear weapons. Now, I've talked about Netanyahu a few times. I already told you. When he lost his re-election back in, I want to say that was 96, vendetta, right? Vendetta and smoke forever in a day. So when he got back in there, it was kind of like, F whatever progress has been made between Israel and Palestine, because remember, this is the era of Yasser Arafat, right? This is Clinton is still in office. Yasser Arafat is still alive. The relations between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and when we're talking about the West Bank and Gaza, things were not perfect, but things were way better than they are now. We were getting close to a two-state solution. It probably still wasn't going to happen, but it was at least, it was almost something you could just almost, if you could just touch the hem of the garment of the policy, we could almost get there, right? That's where we were at. So anyway, so here's the timeline. June 13th, which pissed me off because I was enjoying my time in Miami when I look on my phone and see that all of a sudden Israel is blowing up Iran. I said, God, here we go. Here we go. All right, this is going to be a long. I'm going to take a sip on that. Here we go. Right? So they go and start blowing up Iran with, again, claims of nuclear weapons. And again, my smoke is not for the people of Israel. My smoke is for Netanyahu, right? Because Netanyahu, to me, is a lunatic and should have not been put back into power. Netanyahu is just Trump number 2, to be honest. Evil, vile man. So anyway, claiming that they were attacking nuclear sites and everything else like that. So, of course, Iran is like, we ain't no punks. Y'all not going to keep blowing our stuff up. So they start attacking back, too. And so they've been back and forth for the last few days. And you're starting to see the Iron Dome maybe not have the same defensive strength that it once has had. The Iron Dome, again, is just this really intricate set of defense mechanisms that protects Israel from airborne attacks, right? It's like a whole defense system where even as missiles are being launched all the way from a place like Iran or if Pakistan would ever send anything, all of the different spaces neighboring, Israel that are cordial with Israel and have some type of military agreement first, that's the first phase of the Iron Dome, right? If it gets past that, then it gets to the next portion where by the time it gets to Israel, Israel has all these defense, anti-air rocket little gadgets and stuff that go and shoot all the missiles and stuff down. And usually when people try to attack Israel, not a lot of the missiles really make it in. You shoot 100 missiles at Israel, maybe 6 of them might land. But anyway, I say all that to say, it seems like the Iron Dome may be getting a little overwhelmed, right? You're starting to see a lot more damage in a lot of these cities that are being attacked, right? So we have that take place. All right. Anyway, this brings the United States into the picture. The United States is allies with Israel. And I will say the relationship with Israel has been somewhat strained, especially during the Biden and Harris administration. And that was mainly because, again, everything that happened with Israel and Gaza, as much as Biden and Kamala were being whacked about what was happening on that side, Biden and Harris administration were not really feeling the way that Netanyahu was moving because they recognize that Netanyahu knows that he can pretty much do any and everything in the United States will be in his corner every single time. And I think the Biden-Harris administration started to recognize that. So they started challenging and pushing back a little bit on Netanyahu. This is when the conversations for ceasefire and everything starts pushing. I say all that to say that is no longer the case because Netanyahu recognizes he has more leverage with Trump and Vance because the current administration. Okay, which is one of the reasons why he really started advocating for Trump to be reelected. And it's also one of the reasons why Netanyahu chose to kind of sabotage any conversation about a ceasefire until after the election. He saw what was happening in the United States. He saw the kickback the Biden-Harris administration was receiving with regard to Gaza and the protests on the college campuses and the protest votes and the different movements and what was happening in Dearborn, Michigan. And Netanyahu was like, oh, this kind of works in my favor. So you know what? No, I don't really want to talk about a ceasefire yet. I'm not ready. We'll just keep blowing them up a little bit more. We'll talk about it a little bit later, right? So that's the move. And then finally, January 19th, the day before Orange Man is, sworn back in, that's when we get the ceasefire. And really, to be fair, I don't know why they call it a ceasefire. It's not to me, when I see ceasefire, it's 2 groups that are attacking, right? Gaza was not attacking anybody. They were just getting blown up and moved around. They were being told, go north because we're going to blow up the south. Then they blow up the north. And then they cut off the food supply. They do all this crazy ish, right? That's the reality of what it is. So anyway, the ceasefire is put into place January 19th. Orange Man takes credit for it. He's like, yeah, I ended all of the drama and everything that took place between the Gaza and Israel. And I told you guys I was a great leader day 1, right? Anyway, ceasefire falls apart by March, right? Israel's back to blowing up Gaza. And this is by the time we start getting to Orange Man. He's talking about the Gaza Riviera and everything else like that. Again, Netanyahu recognized that he could get the U.S. to cave and do his dirty work because now the Trump-Vance administration is in power. So here we are. And so getting to Iran, this is why I think people are stressing out of it, right? The U.S. has never attacked or invaded Iran. Now, we did have the incident on January 3rd of 2020, but that technically was in Iraq, where, we had the missile launches and it killed the Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani. And that, I think we did a live that day. I was stressed out because, it's kind of scary living in D.C. when it's conversations of war because, if something go down, D.C., New York, we the first 2 to go. So, or at least with the Middle East. Now, if this was like some war with China, good luck, L.A., San Francisco, and Seattle. Prayers to y'all. But, yeah, so, I was stressed out that day because that was the day he sat there and set off them bombs, and then he posted that pixelated picture of the U.S. flag. And I'm like, y'all got the stupid, oh, Lord, help us. Help us, God, right? So anyway, getting back to Iran. So it kind of reignites the tension that exists between the U.S. and Iran. In addition to the fact that a lot of this was unnecessary because we were almost in a good place. This takes us back to what you call the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2015, aka the Iran deal or Iran. I gotta start saying Iran. I keep saying Iran. That's just the real American accent, but it's Iran. So anyway, understand. Orange Man would not shut up about this deal because he was like, Obama gave money to terrorists, and that's what he ran and ran with it. And that was a huge talking point of his when he was running for office in 2016. The reality is that the Iran deal was a collaborative effort between Iran and a bunch of countries: China, France, Germany, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the EU. This was a massive deal, right? Now let's talk about what was in that deal, right? It was going to state that for 15 years, Iran would agree to enrich uranium by only up to 3.67%. For 15 years, right? We would have still had about 5 years left on that deal had we not pulled out of it. In addition to that, for 10 years, the uranium enrichment was limited to a single facility using first generation centrifuges. I don't even know what that means, but whatever it is, I agree. Okay, right? And then, in addition, the main point was elimination of uranium stockpiles. Iran agreed to eliminate its stockpile of medium enriched uranium and reduce its stockpile of low enriched uranium by 98%. Literally their entire stockpile, right? And this also included the consistent inspections that would come in. They would do the inspections, they would cooperate, and in return, Iran would get sanctions relief. So the sanctions that have been on Iran forever today would get lifted. This meant that the money could go to the people. People could now, again, do commerce with the country of Iran or Iran. And this would help Iran update their infrastructure, enhance their universities, enhance their schools, better food, better everything. Everybody's happy, right? Orange Man gets back into office. May 8th of 2018. Again, he just saw Obama's name. Nope, we're pulling out. So he pulls out of this deal, right? Pulling out of the deal and ending it pretty much gives Iran free reign to do what they want. Okay, you want to cancel the deal and put the sanctions back and everything? Well, we're going to go back to building our uranium then. And so that's what Iran has done. And so Netanyahu and Orange Man again start jumping back to they're so close to this nuclear bomb and we're all in danger. We're all going to die tomorrow if we don't go over there and blow them up. And so that's the narrative that we're getting. And so we're being reintroduced to the idea of this massive nuclear weapon that they're building. However, the confusion that lives is just days ago, our own director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, had said, and I'm going to actually use her actual quote, stated, the intelligence community continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei, I think I'm saying it right, has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. Orange Man said, I don't care what she said. They got weapons. And I'm going to take 2 weeks to figure out what's happening. Because this is when he said, they're getting very, very close to having a weapon. And like I've said, they've been saying this for 33 years. They're getting very, very close. And I'm like, if they ain't got it by now, all right, whatever. Anyway, Iran issues a warning to the U.S. saying, hey, Israel's already bombed us. Do not get involved. Y'all need to mind y'all business. Let Israel dig itself into its own hole. And Trump, again, he's claiming he's going to make the decision in 2 weeks of what he's going to do. Instead, 2 days later, here we are. I'm minding my business, getting ready to enjoy my weekend when I see the notification that we are bombing Iran. And apparently we're attacking 3 nuclear sites. And I think what makes it worse is then again, Orange Man is going to make his actual statement. Can we go back and read the statement he said? Because I'm like, Trump, what the hell, man? Let's see here. Because I think a lot of the bigger problems is, in addition to just the military action, it doesn't help that Trump does this stuff and then he talks so much trash. Like he is, it's almost like, think back when you have like, I don't know, you have that older cousin or whatever that you used to fight with when you were little and they would beat you up and you'd be like, this one didn't hurt. Like it's kind of like that same energy. Of course, my little gadget here doesn't want to move faster, but we're going to make this work. Hold on. Orange Man, here we go. Let's go back to this statement that he initially released. This is before the 10 o'clock address to the nation, because again, all right, that was okay. We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Right? I'm like, oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So he has that going, right? Then we get to the national address. What was I going to share? Because that picture was driving me crazy. So then, he goes in front of the country and he gets ready to do his address. I need to actually open this picture back. Where's that picture at? Oh, yes, this one here. So he's over here in front of the country talking to everybody. And it's an interesting speech because it's not very diplomatic. It's one of those speeches that if you're already pissed off with somebody, you're going to be pissed off with them a little bit more. And then the interesting part is then it's like he starts thanking God, and somehow this is a godly thing that's taking place. And then again, the conversation of calling for peace and telling Iran, well, pretty much y'all got a choice. You do more, it will be even worse. You're going to get more. And so it's like watching somebody play Jenga when the game, Jenga the game where you stack the blocks and you put little pieces and you try to not make the tower collapse. It's like watching somebody on the very first move in Jenga pull the bottom right piece. When you had at least a dozen middle pieces, you could have slid out and things would still be smooth. Like we said, that entire region is just like here, right? Waiting for something to just one domino got to fall. It's going down, right? And so you would think that there would be a little bit more diplomacy with how people move, but no, he just snatched that domino. And then you got goofy ass Rubio right here. You got drunk Peter Hegseth, and of course, smoky-eyed JD Vance all standing there. And I'm like, now who y'all supposed to be? Four of the dumbest MFers on the planet in charge of everything. Now, this is why I've been getting mad about the election, because I'm like, it was fine. Well, no, it wasn't fine, but whatever. If y'all didn't like who was on the Democrat side, can't y'all put somebody normal on the Republican side? Why y'all always got to put the extremity in charge? Because the extremity is going to do nothing but put more extremities in their cabinet. And so we are living in a country with a cabinet full of idiots that are all over the place. Like, this is like, actually, that's going to be real rude. I'm not going to say that. Just know it's a lot, right? Anyway, let's stop sharing this. I done got annoyed. Let's see here. Piss me off. So anyway, here's the issue when we talk a little bit bigger about the bigger picture, right? It seems like there wasn't really an effort to make sure that things were done with the long-term outcome being considered. We have tons of military troops stationed all over the Middle East, right? Tons. And the issue is all of them are currently in danger, right? A lot of people were fearful about retaliation from Iran coming to the mainland. Yes, that's a threat, but at the moment, the bigger threat is for U.S. troops that are over in the Middle East. And that also includes military troops that are also in Europe, because Europe is not that far off the Richter either, right? And so in the event that Iran does retaliate, it's likely that they're going to strike one of these military installations if it happens. Now, when we did the situation with Iraq and killed the Iranian general, they did a strike at a military base and it kind of stopped there. That's when Trump was like, the troops had all these different injuries, and he's like, oh no, they just had a headache. It wasn't that bad. They didn't get us that bad. So that was one, right? And like we said, we have troops out in Europe that are at risk. In the event that one of those bases in Europe gets attacked, now this pulls in the conversation of NATO, because of the agreement that we have with all the NATO countries. But I will say that I'm convinced that in the event that something were to go down, I don't think all of NATO is really about to back the U.S. in anything, because a lot of the countries in NATO are kind of over the U.S. at the moment, specifically because Orange Man has bullied everybody in NATO because he wants them to pay more into NATO and this, that, and the third. And we won't use our protection if you guys don't do this. So a lot of folks are like, a lot of the stuff that you guys are jumping into, United States, is self-inflicted. Don't bring us in it. We trying to, again, invest in our people and put investments into things that matter. We're not trying to blow up everybody every 5 minutes. And so when we're talking about these military installations, now we've actually cut down the amount of military bases that we have around the world and installations, because we used to have 880 around the world. We now have 750 in over 80 countries, right? And so the purpose of all these different bases is more so for military action in the event that we ever invade a country on that side of the world, specifically the Middle East and portions of Asia. That's where the bulk of our bases are. We have a lot in Europe, but we don't really have any technically enemies in Europe, minus, the smoke we got with Russia. And sometimes Belarus be trying to shake the table a little bit because, I think for them, it's because they border Russia. They're like, we're going to keep the peace with Russia. We're not really dealing with y'all, US, because if something go down, y'all not going to protect us, because we see kind of what y'all been doing in some of these other countries. Anyway, say all that to say, we have these bases in all these different regions, and those bases are there more so in the event that if there is some kind of attack in the Middle East, or we do something over in Asia, before we start pulling all of our troops and our weapons that are in mainland USA, we'll start sending the different brigades that are already in that region. So I think back to when I lived in Italy, right? because I was a military kid. And so when we had the actions that were taking place in Yugoslavia and Kosovo, a lot of the troops that were being sent into the region were not coming from the US mainland. There were some, but a lot of them were coming from different bases that were in Germany, that were in Italy, that were in different regions that were already close to that side. Same thing when it came to the weapons and everything else that were taking place. They were coming from United States military installations that were already on that side, rather than shipping them all the way from, I don't know what the new name for Fort Bragg is, but, shipping stuff from Fort Bragg or Joint Base Lewis McChord or places from Fort Benning and stuff like that. They were utilizing bases that were already on that side. And it's the same thing with regard to when we bring weapons back for repairs. A lot of times they go back to those installations in Europe or in the Middle East or in Asia, and they don't always come back to the United States. So when you're talking about like property book officers in the United States that deal with a lot of the weaponry or the machinery and stuff, we have them everywhere. There's some in the mainland, but there are some all over Europe and in Asia and in the Middle East. So the idea of all these bases is more so that any event we ever go over to somewhere, we have reinforcements. But on the flip side, these individual installations and bases are not built for attacks from other countries, because a lot of these installations are not big. Some of these installations only have 100 people that work there and live there. Some of these places are not necessarily protected from attacks from other groups, and they depend on the proximity to other military installations and bases that may be 20 or 30 miles nearby for their own protection. And so those are the troops that are currently probably stressing out right now because they're not sure what to expect. And those are things that I feel like Orange Man and them did not really consider and think about before they just jumped into this next wave of nonsense. And then it gets deeper than that, right? So again, any element of some kind of attack or anything just escalates the conversation for a larger scale war, something none of us want to be in. And I think the bigger issue is this was not even our fight. Israel and Iran, let them do whatever they got going. That y'all want to get the box cutters and duke it out, go for it. Don't call us. That's kind of where I'm at. And so you even got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I thought I would ever see eye to eye with on anything, saying, what are we doing? This is not our fight. You said you were going to be the president of peace and no drama, and how you even got us in this bullshit? Like, how am I agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene? Hell is freezing over up in here. Anyway, so you have that. And then what's also interesting is like the U.S. and Israel, we're the two countries that have nuclear weapons. And it's so interesting that, we can have them. And again, the United States is the only country that's actually used one. But then we want to police and kind of regulate who else can do what, going after every other person on the planet because we don't want them to have one. Even when you see the narratives, even our politicians and people in Congress, Iran must not receive one. They must not receive. And can we be honest? For all the instability that's taking place in the Middle East right now, if Iran were to gain a nuclear weapon, it's not going to be for provocation. It's going to be for protection. Pretty much, I see that, and I could be 100% wrong, but just piecing everything together with how I've seen things go so far, if anything, it just puts Iran in a space where they're looking at the U.S. like, we see y'all, you see us. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. That's it. The U.S. knows, don't go over there and shake the table. Iran is never going to shake the table with us like that. And then for them, it's their sense of protection from anybody else bothering them. That also makes Israel have to recalibrate where they stand and how they move in that region. Israel gets the luxury to go and punk all the countries in the Middle East because they know the U.S. will jump in. I'll get my big brother to come beat you up right now. Think back to when you used to talk trash in elementary school. You go and find the biggest kid that you didn't like. I'll get my big brother to come stump you out because, the big brother was in middle school or high school or something. That's how Israel moves, right? And so Iran having a nuclear weapon, and I'm not advocating for nuclear anything because I'm anti-war. War is stupid. It's a waste of time. All of the big drama is between the leadership, not the actual people. There's not a single person on this live right now that can tell me it's somebody over in Iran that they got beef with. They can't name nobody. And I'm not talking about the leadership. I'm talking about regular, everyday citizens. Not a single person in this chat can go and name, there's somebody in Iran that needs to die because they're attacking my freedom. Not a single person. When two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. So nonsense, right? Anyway, and so I think people are tired of this because it's like we're constantly sending our kids to go fight. And then they get sent over there, come back all broke up, and then we don't even take care of them. They be on the streets panhandling, right? We cut all the VA benefits. We cut all these different things. We make cuts to health care. TRICARE changes all their rules every other week. TRICARE is like the military health care and everything else like that. And when it's all said and done, the U.S. cannot afford a large-scale war right now. We're already one step from recession, and now y'all want to jump into some new-ish, right? Now, worst case scenario, which I don't really see happening right now, but I could be 100% wrong. And I actually want to be wrong because I don't want the worst case scenario to take place. The other thing that I don't think people are thinking about is this is not 30 years ago. It's not even 40 years ago. United States would go and punk a bunch of countries because we always go and punk the countries that can't come over here to us and bother us, right? It was easy to go in Iraq because it was like, yeah, they're not gonna come to the U.S. and they really didn't even have an army. It was like Saddam Hussein once you took him out, and they were already in the middle of a civil war. They got enough going on, so we're over there. The civilians are getting killed, right? We always go in these countries that don't really have the resources to get to us, but that's not necessarily the case because a lot of those countries have now made strong allies with two of our biggest adversaries, is what they would like to say. Like I said, I don't got beef with nobody. I be here minding my business, chilling. The enemies and everything of the U.S., that's the people in charge with who they beefing with. I don't know none of these people. I don't have no beef with China. I ain't got no beef with Russia. Y'all leave me alone. I'm gonna leave y'all alone because I wasn't going over there no way. Enjoy. Right? But a lot of countries have now gained leverage with places like a China or North Korea or Russia. And so the fear for some people is like, in the event that we piss off the wrong country and they go get their big brother, big sister, now boom, Russia's in the mix, or boom, China's in the mix. Now, the reason I'm not at the moment 100% concerned in that realm, and I'm walking on ice with this, is that for me, I'm convinced that China's more so invested in, again, their expansion and economic footprint around the world. They are setting themselves up to run the world, which is that's where they're at economically. That's why they've taken over the whole continent of Africa. They got all these infrastructure deals all around the world. They're not worried about war. They're like, yeah, U.S., y'all keep blowing up stuff all you want because y'all aren't investing in your people. We're going to keep investing in all these different things. Their GDP has grown. We're watching the way of the I guess, quality of life enhanced. Like when you talk about China from the 1970s versus China of today, it's like two separate worlds. Please go back and look at what China used to be like in the 1970s versus now. Right? They're not perfect. They got their flaws just like every country, but their focus is their economy. Now, when it comes to Russia, clearly Ukraine ain't go as well and as easy as they thought it was going to go. So I don't think Russia's really trying to jump into anything right now. But the bigger issue that is actually more so in the moment right now is then you have the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is the strait that connects the Persian Gulf with the rest of the world. This is where it gets very interesting. And this is where I look at Marco Rubio like a freaking idiot, right? So you go over there, you blow up Iran, and you go and destroy what you're claiming is their military, nuclear sites and all this other stuff, right? You go and tear all that stuff up. And then Iran is like, okay, we got y'all. We're going to close this strait because understand that strait, 1/5 of the world's oil passes through that strait, right? Right. And so it could, like I said, it connects the Persian Gulf to the rest of the world. You have Marco Rubio who goes and asks China to go and tell Iran, hey, don't close it. You guys go tell China. I need y'all to go tell Iran to stop what they're doing with the Strait of Hormuz. Like they gotta stop it. We can't have that. You guys can go tell them that. And I'm like, are we in a trade war with China? You guys, China was the first group of people Orange Man went after. Orange Man couldn't even get sworn in good. He was, I got to get to China. He asked China, we're going to, the tariff this and the tariff that, and 60% and 140%, and China, China. Like, he was not playing. First place he went after. So you put them in this whole tariff war. We go back and forth. This is round 2 of the tariff war, because remember, we did the crap in 2017, which is why all the farmers went broke, right? And when we had the whole soybean situation, and then all them farmers lost all that money, and the farmers had to get bailed out, but then the black farmers didn't get bailed out because they weren't USDA farms. Another conversation for another day. We've had it on this channel a million times, so I'm not going to rehash it. And so the very country that you keep poking the stick with, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Now you need them to go do us a favor with their ally, because China and Iran is like, what's up, Iran? How you doing, man? How's the knees? Yeah, I saw your kids just growing. It's so good to see you. That's China and Iran. Why? The only leverage that we even have in that conversation, as far as China possibly saying, hey, Iran, can y'all open the strait so that the U.S. can get their oil and their goods, is only because China happens to be the biggest consumer, or what you could say is their biggest, how do I want to say it? Is their biggest oil customer for that region. Coming from Iran. China is Iran's biggest oil customer. So that's the only leverage that the U.S. may have with convincing China to participate in reopening the strait. Because understand, oil prices are about to go up. If oil prices go up, that affects everything, and that comes down to your doorstep, because now this goes into conversations of productivity. When it comes to different goods, when it comes to trade, oil prices go up, everything goes up because it costs more money to move all this stuff around. And in the event that that strait stays closed, now, again, even when it comes to trade, that changes things. That's kind of like if the Panama Canal were ever to close, right? It automatically means that instead of cutting through that region of Central America, now you got to go all the way around South America and come up. It adds extra weeks and stuff. So everybody's money and commerce gets affected. And so, like I said, nobody was thinking this crap out. Rubio's an idiot, right? I don't know how y'all put him back in there, Florida. I know y'all weren't crazy over Val Demings, but damn, really? I mean, I guess he stepped down and ended up joining the cabinet, but still. Oh, my God. Make it make sense. Right? And when it's all said and done, I think a lot of the people who are always so pro, let's go to war, especially regular everyday citizens who actually enjoy all of this and think it's a great thing to go and bomb these countries. They do that because they've never lived in a space where war has been fought on the home front. Other than the attack of Pearl Harbor, right, which most people are alive to remember because most of the people that were there are now dead or deceased or one step from it. Not to sound rude or insensitive, I'm just saying it's time, right? Time passes, people get older. We've never known that. So we're so used to every time we go to war, it's over there. Vietnam, it's over there. Korean War, it's over there. Desert Storm, it's over there. Operation Enduring Iraqi Freedom, it's over there. Whatever happened in Afghanistan, it's over there. Desert Shield, it's over there. Everything that we've done in all these different countries, it's over there. It's never here. And so it creates this mindset of invincibility with a lot of people who just think, oh yeah, because even the narrative, oh, we have the biggest, strongest army, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we have the biggest, strongest army. We have about 1.3 million people in our military. China has 2.3 million people. They got twice as many people. So if it's God for God, that means you got to take on 2 people. I don't know a whole lot of folks that can fight 2 people at once, right? And that's just population size as far as military. We're not talking even about weapons and technology because we're now coming to a space where with a lot of countries, they don't even have to send troops because you got drones, you got all kind of ballistic missiles and all kind of stuff where people can do everything from the comfort of a computer and never leave their desk and go and blow up and kill 1,000 people in 20 minutes. That's the reality. The U.S. has just been lucky that we have been spared, that because of our geographic location and because we have an ocean separating us from literally everybody that has smoke for us on the other coastlines, whether it's cutting across the Atlantic or cutting across the Pacific or even going around the Pacific and through the Indian Ocean, we just have the luxury of where we're located. But please understand, if the United States were connected to Asia or Europe, things would be very, very different, right? We wouldn't move in the same manner we would move because it would be so much easier for people to invade us. We're a very hard country to invade. That's the saving grace for the United States. But that does not really give us justification to go and start stuff with everybody because we think we're always going to be exempt, right? That's the nonsense. And I think it gets a little bit deeper because, again, we're doing all this with of all people. Y'all, it's Orange Man in charge with all this happening, right? The guy who does not listen to intelligence, the guy who thinks he knows everything because I alone can do it. Lord, he moves with no consequence, right? And it doesn't matter whatever happens, he's always going to move the goalpost. So even when things go wrong, he'll lie about it. And then his team will push it. Our media accepts it, and it becomes a narrative. It becomes a norm. In the same way that his inauguration was the most attended inauguration in history, when we literally saw it on camera and nobody was there. Okay, more people went to the Diana Ross Central Park concert back in '83, 800,000 people versus his 350 at the inauguration. Just saying, right? I think the other issue that has a lot of people going, people are on the fence about whether or not this counts as an act of war or if this is a small, minute military operation. Because if it counts as an act of war, then it means that he was supposed to consult with Congress, which he did not. Now, there are reports that he consulted with some members. And when we say consult, meaning you actually have to get congressional approval. It's not just calling them and say, hey, we're going to blow some people up. All right, I'll call you back. It's more like, oh, no, you need to go before Congress and they got to vote yay or nay. So when we went to Iraq, right, for all the smoke that we get about going to Iraq, Congress voted yes, let's go over there and blow it up. Unfortunately, right? They had all these hearings. This is when they had Colin Powell sitting up there and he was talking about the inspectors going to look for the facilities for the weapons of mass destruction. And as the people were coming, the people were pulling out in the trucks with the weapons, driving away, like all of that, right? He had to go before all the people, and Condoleezza Rice was doing her testimony, and boom, we go to war. That's what that was supposed to be. None of that has happened here. He just went and shot off everything. So people are kind of trying to figure out whether or not this is even legal. Then comes the conversation of impeachment. And now I've seen some people say, oh, I don't want to hear about impeachment because he's been impeached twice and nothing happened. And I'm like, yeah, nothing happened because this goes back to what I said when Orange Man was reelected, that most of my smoke is for Mitch McConnell, the turtle man, because Mitch McConnell had 2 opportunities to convict this man in the Senate and ensure that he could never run for office again. Mitch McConnell said, no, that would divide America. We just want America to be united. So he's learned his lesson. the embarrassment is enough for him to learn his lesson. And Stephen McConnell, that's why your brain ain't working out. You can't even remember nothing. That's your karma. And so, like, because of that, there were no convictions in either impeachment hearings. He was impeached in the House both times, but he was not convicted in the Senate. And that's why nothing happened. And that's why he got to remain, you know, in power. You know, the first impeachment was towards the end of his term anyway. But again, no conviction in the Senate, keeps it moving. The second impeachment was pretty much after the election. He only was going to have about 2 months left anyway. And again, they were like, "Oh, he's learned his lesson. He's learned his lesson. That's more than enough." Susan Collins, the one that's always so concerned, he's learned his lesson. He's learned. Here we are. This is why I always be saying, don't be giving an inch to nonsense, because you keep giving an inch to BS. Eventually, they take a whole mile and run a marathon with it. And now we're in the marathon, and everybody's tired and out of breath, but we still got 30 miles to go. We're only on mile number 1, because it ain't been but 5 months. Hell, hosts don't listen. It's stupid. Anyway, I've said a lot. I'm going to take a break and read some comments here. Apologies for speaking a million words a minute. I had to get it all out. That was like 9 pages of notes. And if I slowed down, we'd still be going through it. All right. I'm not going to be able to get to every comment, but I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. All right. Somebody said Netanyahu's been working the nerves, and the Christian world knows. Okay, for some reason I don't get what they're trying to say, but okay. Netanyahu's working on his way to becoming a dictator, almost knocking on Hitler behavior. Somebody said, Lord help us. U.S. intelligence stated that Iran was not enriching uranium to build nuclear weapons. We live in the dumbest, most dangerous times. Again, we're in the era of anti-intellectualism. And it's become so normalized to the point where people who can just say any and everything have massive platforms and massive followings. Everybody wants to be contrarian. That's the one thing I don't like about this era, is like everybody is so pressed to not be associated with the idea of collective thought that they have to be contrarian at all moments in all instances. So even when you say 1 + 1 is 2, somebody's like, but is it really 2? Because if you take the 1 and cut it in half, you know, they will find something, and then they'll go and make an Instagram post and put some big letters and some music behind it with some conviction and an AI voice. And next thing you know, it's getting shared everywhere. And then all of us on here, did you know 1 + 1 really ain't 2? Yeah, that's what they want you to think. They say that's the problem. Y'all be asleep, but y'all ain't ready for that conversation. Like having a YouTube channel makes it even worse, because some of the comments I be getting, I'm like, y'all can't be serious. You know, like that meme they have of Taraji from that. I didn't see the movie, but whatever Tyler Perry movie just came out with Taraji, where she's just that's where we're at right now. That's my mood for the rest of the year. Somebody said all 4 of them looking like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That was about Rubio, Hegseth, and the rest of them. Calvin, have you done an extensive video in the past discussing why other governments are against Iran developing nuclear program and the history? Not really. I mean, we kind of talk about it in passing. No, I haven't. That's a good question. Maybe we'll go into that. And I can say this too, as far as the nuclear weapon. Like, again, I am anti-war. I think war is dumb. I don't think anybody needs to have nuclear weapons. And I'm not advocating for all these places to go and get weapons and use them. But I understand why. Like, I say all this to say I understand why countries are moving in the way that they're moving. They've seen the patterns of what has happened globally over the last 50 years. And countries just want to protect themselves and their people. Because understand, you got a nuclear weapon, ain't nobody going to bother you. We're talking all this trash about Iran, but you notice we ain't moving anything with North Korea. North Korea be like having missile tests everywhere. And if you ever watch like their media, you know, the lady they got, that's their main news journalist. She kind of like got like the short, like Michelle haircut, and she be wearing the robe, and she be on the thing talking about, you know, I don't know, I'm just going to say it in English, but you know, she like, and again, we've launched another missile that will destroy America. And they be cheering and all. We don't say nothing to them. Why? Because we don't know what they got over there, right? They're waiting for us. So we keep it real light and bright with North Korea. Right? Again, once countries kind of have certain things, we don't really bother them. They go, okay, all right, okay, all right. So again, it's kind of like when you're like, oh, I'm gonna get my big sister to go beat you up. Okay, when you say that, but then they got a big sister, big brother that's bigger than your big sister, big brother, you kind of get quiet. You know, then you start, all right, here's my lunch money. I was just playing. I was tripping. Okay, I'll ask my mom to get Uncrustables next week. All right, I'll see what I can do. Right? The energy start changing when you ain't one in charge of nothing. Right? When you can't punk everybody. Somebody said we're such a short-term thinking society, which again, I think I was on that rant 2 lives ago. Whereas again, it's just like we live in a very surface level environment. A lot of it has to do with social media, but we consume information so much faster, and we're now consuming it in a way where we don't have the patience to sit and really saturate and really iron out details with a lot of things. So we take surface level information and then try to do whole deep dives on it, or start whole movements, or start whole conversations with surface level knowledge of certain information. And this is why we have so many people that don't know anything. All right. All right. AJ here said CBS Baltimore online stream Patty's show, which ended over an hour ago. I know, but I wanted to be there. I went to Afram last year. It was a really good time. I think that was, they had Busta Rhymes at the time. But for some reason, I really enjoy everything Baltimore had. Baltimore is just a fun city. I love DC. DC is home. I've been here 20 years. But Baltimore, I really enjoy as well. Maybe because it's just right down the street. And it's sometimes when I want to escape DC for a day or two, Baltimore's like another country. So, yeah. Anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, Solomon 321. I did see Orange Man's speech. He's saying Fort Bragg's name was changed back to Fort Bragg. I forgot Orange Man was just so into renaming all of the bases that had been changed from Confederate leadership back to Confederate leadership. And it was so funny because I saw the justification where I think Stephen Miller was talking about, well, again, it's preserving history. And I'm like, but at the same time, y'all gutting all the black history. So I see how y'all moving. Thank you, Slick. All right. All right. Somebody said these countries are tired of America and Israel's BS. I just hope everybody, the rest of the world, please understand it ain't all of us. It's the leadership. And I didn't even vote for this, man. I didn't. And now there's rumors that and investigations that possibly the election didn't even really go the way it was supposed to go. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to talk about it yet until it gets a little bit further. I know the court case is delayed until September, so we'll see then. We'll definitely go back to that conversation about what was going on in upstate New York. But anyway, please know, all us just trying to mind our business. Like Iran, like I said, I don't know nobody over there. I ain't got no beef. So if you decide to blow up some stuff, make your bombs or whatever black people proof. Make them anti-black because we ain't had nothing to do with it. Okay. Yeah. Anti-black as in they don't hit us. All right. Let's see. Christine said, I live in Cali. Gas is about to be 15 a gallon. And you know, gas in Cali already high because they got them gas taxes. Like, man, the last time I was in LA, I was like, why is gas like $6 a gallon? I wouldn't be driving nowhere. And then y'all got that traffic too? Like, you be trying to go from Culver City to Glendale. You're going to be in that car for 9 days. Man. Okay. Oh, don't worry, Gloria. I'm gonna get to Ted Cruz and his goofy behind. He's actually the next subject of conversation. He embarrassed himself in that interview. Nuclear bombs don't forgive. Said the con artist that the people voted for. Yes, Mitch McConnell's still alive. They kind of just prop him up and stand him up straight and hope he can sign whatever bill he's saying yes to, but whatever vote he's on. But yeah, there's that. Okay, we're gonna keep moving. All right. Okay, I guess I did. Okay, that only took about 45 minutes. I guess it did take about 45 minutes. That's not too bad. All right. Now the next thing, Ted Cruz, right? Because it's interesting. We've had so many politicians where we've watched them do full 180s when it comes to their ideologies and how they move. So when you look at Ted Cruz, remember at one point he and Orange Man were opposite sides of the spectrum. Trump called his wife ugly, and said that his daddy killed JFK and lying Ted, right? Same thing with Rubio. Rubio and Orange Man were going at it. Rubio's like, Trump got small hands and blah, blah, blah. Everybody under the sun hated this man. Then when they realized that there was leverage and proximity to power, which would gain and bring them wealth, all of them started changing their tune. Rubio changed his tune. Tulsi Gabbard literally went from a Democrat to, I don't know what she is, but she changed her tune. Who's the Nikki Haley? Nikki Haley changed her tune. Everybody and their mom has changed their tune, and they just got in line. So then we get to Ted Cruz. I said, hell really is freezing over because all the people that I don't like are making sense at the moment. And it's scaring me. Now, I will say this too, like, understand at the same time. So when it comes to, because I've seen Candace Owens say some things that actually make sense. I've seen Tucker Carlson. Understand, For me, terrible people still don't get passes for spontaneous bouts of decency. So I don't care what they said. I still don't F with none of them people. They still on my S word list permanently. So no, doesn't change around here. But anyway, so Ted Cruz does this interview with Tucker Carlson. Now remember, Tucker Carlson used to be on Fox News. He is one of the main distributors of disinformation and misinformation for like the last 20 years, right? He loved to harp on the grievances of white racist Americans and paint everybody to be the boogeyman, the bad guy, and all the economic problems that existed in America was because of everybody except for white folks. That was literally his ideology. That's what he painted. That's what he pushed. When we're talking about the idea of divisive rhetoric, because people love to say, oh, Obama was the most divisive president ever. And I'm like, Obama didn't even talk about race. The divisiveness came from people's reaction to this man, right? So the Tucker Carlsons and the Bill O'Reillys and the Megyn Kellys and all the people who they spent all of their time painting everything and any element of progress to be something that worked against white people. And that's why Megyn Kelly had to remind us that Santa Claus was white, right? That's where we're at. Anyway, Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz do this interview. And it's very interesting because Ted Cruz has been able to kind of get away with just BSing all the time. Like, remember, this is the guy when Texas had the big freeze. Because remember, Texas is in their own power grid. The U.S., there's two major U.S. power grids, and then Texas has their own thing because of privatized industry. And so a few years back when there was that great big freeze, pretty much all of Texas lost power. And then what did Ted Cruz do? Ted Cruz got on a plane with his family, went to Mexico. And then when he got the smoke, he decided, he came right back like literally the next day and then blamed it on his daughter. Do I have the picture when he was, I think I got the picture when he was going back from the airport. Ted, where you at, Ted? Hold on, I got to find that picture. Where's this fool at? Because where's he at? Do I have it? I know I had it in here. If not, for the sake of time, we'll keep moving. Oh, no, I got it. Oh, yes. Ted, here you go. Sorry, y'all, I had to pull it up. Here we go. Here's that picture. So this is right after all the smoke came, right? And then look how empty the airport is. First of all the flights canceled because everything frozen. Ain't no power, right? Ted Cruz comes back and he tries to put on that little Texas mask. Like, I'm one of the people. Meanwhile, whole family in Punta Cana, Cancun, living it up. All the Texas residents freezing. Pipes burst. Ain't nobody can take a bath. Ain't nobody got no heat. And so he comes back and then again blames it on the daughter, like, oh, she just wanted to go to Mexico. I'm like, really? You gonna blame it on the daughter? Okay, interesting. So that's Ted Cruz. So he does this interview with Tucker Carlson, and when I tell you, Tucker Carlson is tearing this man a new one. It is the most interesting watch. I played the video, but I don't feel like getting yanked and pulled from YouTube. So they start having a conversation about Iran, and Tucker Carlson's like, well, how many people live in Iran? Ted Cruz doesn't know. Then they have this whole argument, and Ted Cruz is like, it doesn't really matter what the population is. And Tucker Carlson is like, it does. If this is a country that you're trying to literally take out, you should know how many people are there. And Tucker Carlson's like, it's actually, there's 92 million people that live in Iran, right? Ted Cruz was not able to name the ethnic mix as far as the people that are in Iran. Because again, to these people, everybody's just Arab and Muslim. They just call everybody Arab Muslims. They just mix everybody in one big bucket. But what gets very interesting is when he starts to pull the Bible card, right? But then he couldn't equate or even quote the actual verse he was trying to reference. And he kept trying to talk about, well, the Bible says that those who bless Israel get blessed, and those who curse Israel get cursed and everything. So then Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz have this conversation about, well, what actually is Israel? Because we know biblically there's an Israel, but the Israel in the Bible is about the people of Israel as far as those who were practicing Judaism. And they're talking about Israel as far as the people, the body, not necessarily what has been established in 1948. Right. And so they're kind of having that debate. And then Ted Cruz claims that we are commanded by God, right, to support Israel. So Tucker Carlson is like, so we're commanded by God to support the Israeli government. Again, the Israeli government is not technically Israel if we're talking about biblically Israel, right? And specifically Netanyahu, who wasn't even born there. Like, don't get me started. Don't get me started. Right. And so this brings about the conversation of where does separation of church and state fall? Because he's literally on here acknowledging that all of his diplomatic and international decisions when it comes to foreign policy is centered in his biblical beliefs, which, again, when these people sign and get sworn into office, they're supposed to acknowledge the fact that, again, within our Constitution, because, again, they're supposed to swear in to uphold the Constitution, separation of church and state. This is not to attack anybody's religious beliefs or what they believe. But, again, if the tables were turned, and there was a black politician who happened to be Muslim, and he started making his decisions based on his Muslim faith, y'all be out here ready for the firing squad to come out. That's the main point. And again, the bigger conversation is these people have selective religious affiliation. They only like to be Christians when it's beneficial for them or when they're doing something terrible. And they use Christianity as a justification to do whatever terrible thing they're doing, whether that's going and bombing people or doing other random things. This is why, like, when Orange Man got elected the first time and the second time, you have people like Paula White, like, ooh, Jesus is back in the White House. And I'm like, please tell me what element of Jesus is in Trump. Is it him sleeping with Stormy Daniels while Melania was pregnant with Barron? Is it the sexual assaults and the lawsuits from the 15 or 16 women that accused him of sexual assault? Is it all the racism? Is it him taking out the article calling for the death penalty of the Central Park Five? Right? Is it for him, choosing not to rent a black tenants? Is it for him not paying a lot of his contractors and running people out? Like, well, it can't be what I'm witnessing. It can't be what's happening now. It can't be the same guy that said, hey, well, since these people are protesting out here in the spring of 2020, maybe we just shoot them all. I know that ain't Jesus. Right? Because when it's all said and done, like I said, they use religion as their ploy because they recognize that in reality, and people hate when I say this, but the reality is their God is whiteness. When we talk about evangelicals and a lot of these really hard conservative white Americans that are so religious, but again, when it comes to feeding the poor, they get pissed off. When it comes to the working class or people getting any element of support, they get pissed off. When it comes to doing anything decent, they get violent. When it comes to any element of progress, whether that was, again, integrating neighborhoods, they were out there with the Klan rallies and the AK-47s and the AR-15s and burning people in the lynching, all of that stuff, the Christianity goes out the window. Their God is whiteness. And I say that because they feel that the blessings that they feel that they have, which is just basically common living, having a house, having a job, and some health care, they feel that those are, only for them, because they are the chosen ones, and the hell with everybody else. And that's why even when we're talking about even like religion, I don't really jump too much into religion on this channel because I try to respect where people stand. But again, we see the pattern. So when we talk about American evangelicals, a lot of the policy they get behind does not align with what's in the Bible. It's not even remotely close, but it does align with whiteness and maintaining a status quo of what you call white supremacy through the lens of anti-blackness, right? That's the same way that Ted Cruz moves. And so it was also interesting because in that interview, then he had to admit that, he's taking a lot of money from AIPAC. We know AIPAC is pretty much, they had that whole alliance with the alliance between America and Israel. And so this is why a lot of our politicians, including Hakeem Jeffries, as much as people love him, are bought out, right, through AIPAC, right? This is why Israel is able to kind of really run our country. Because let's be honest, Israel runs the United States, right? They run it all. They run a lot of our politicians. It's like, why is it that when people run for office, one of the first questions that they're asked is about Israel? Even at a state level, have we not paid attention to what's happening in New York, where, you got all these different candidates for the Democrat nomination, and they're asking them, well, where do you stand with Israel? What does that have to do with the state of New York? Israel way over there. Like, my God. Right? And so they have a portion where Tucker Carlson also asked Ted Cruz, well, okay, because they were having this argument about AIPAC and whether AIPAC is really about, pursuing and pushing Israeli interests in the United States, or is it for the American people? And Tucker Carlson was like, well, can you name a policy when, the United States, or I'm not the United States, AIPAC had an opposing view to any of the actions by Netanyahu? And of course, Tucker Carlson could not name any. And I'm like, see, here we go. Right. And then we also get the slip of him pretty much saying that, yeah, we're carrying out military strikes in Iran. And Tucker Carlson was like, wait a minute, the United States said we weren't. And Tucker Carlson or Ted Cruz like, no, we are, but through Israel. And it's just like, y'all don't have y'all stuff together. Y'all, all the secrets are slipping out on national TV. And the scary part is that a sizable portion of our leadership currently move in the same manner that Ted Cruz moves. The exact same manner. That should kind of scare y'all. That should get you active. That should probably get some of you who choose to purposely sit out, because a lot of y'all been whacking me in my comments for the last few months because y'all know I am pissed off about this election, right? Folks have been saying, yeah, this is why people aren't excited to go, because y'all make us feel bad. Okay, again, a vote is not, I don't need you to be excited to vote. I just need you to do some harm reduction and use some common sense. Like, we ain't had to be in half of this shit. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, let me pause on that. Ted Cruz, embarrassing. Texas, when the time comes again to get this man out, please. I mean, y'all got a while. He gonna be there for a minute because y'all put him right back in there. But there's that. All right, let me read some comments here. Somebody said this country's on our last leg. And the point is, it doesn't even have to be. we got so much money sitting around. Use the money to invest in the people, invest in education, invest in healthcare, invest in infrastructure, invest in housing, invest in the youth, in the up and coming, invest in the elderly to make sure that they're taken care of, especially because we're going to have a huge portion and segment of the country that retires and is no longer of working age, which also means that there will be new opportunities. Well, AI just showed up, so never mind. But there's just so many things we could invest in. But no, we spend all our time fighting with everybody and voting against ourselves. Well, not. I mean, if you hear, you probably aren't a part of that conversation, but you know what I mean. Like, Lord, make sense, right? Somebody said folks want to both sides everything. Oh yeah, because I've been seeing all the hypotheticals about, well, if Kamala was in here, this still would have happened. We will never know. She didn't get in, so all I can do is talk about where we're at right now, right? Now, I know that, again, the United States and Israel are already moving the way that they move. So pretty much, in all honesty, when any politician gets in there, until there is some kind of shift in the way that we do things, a lot of times we are going to align with whoever is in charge over there, unfortunately. That is a reality. But again, I'm not moving in hypotheticals. So I'm like, Orange Man went and shot his missiles and made some tweets. That ain't got nothing to do with hypotheticals that didn't take place. All right. Somebody said it was too hot for Afram out in Baltimore. All right. Let's see. Where we at? Oh, JD Vance changed his JD. First of all, JD Vance is the epitome. I'm gonna do a separate video on it, so I'm not even gonna say it. But I have another DEI video coming because I know America has to miss it at this point because y'all don't put all of the most unqualified white men in charge of everything. First of all, JD Vance has never had to work for anything. Everything he has been given to him. I forgot the rich man's name who pretty much put him out there. Actually, yeah. What is that rich man's name? He pretty much put JD Vance into every position he's ever had. Rich man behind JD Vance. Maybe y'all might know in the chat, but I was just happening to look up JD Vance's whole background. I was like, he ain't ever worked for nothing. He done just always had some super wealthy man behind him, putting him into these positions that he's not qualified for. Even running him as Ohio governor was, again, money put behind him. He don't get me started, man. Like, what? Who's this rich man's name? Maybe one of y'all got it in the chat. Let me scroll to the bottom. Oh, yeah, y'all got it. Peter Thiel, or whatever his name is. Peter and funded this man's whole lifestyle and his entire trajectory. When you want to talk about mediocre, unqualified, the only thing he be doing is working that smoky eye. So, like, I don't have the bandwidth. Thank you for those who put that in there. Freaking mess, man. Let's see where we're at here. Somebody said, can't believe I agree with Tucker Carlson of all people, anything. That's where I'm at. But like I said, my moment of agreement with him whacking Ted Cruz or even Candace Owens whacking Orange Man or Marjorie Taylor Greene whacking Orange Man, they get that. They still don't get no pass from me. They still on my permanent S-word list. I don't take them seriously with anything, especially because like I said, a lot of them know how this stuff operates. But again, they chose profit over reality and integrity. So they will never get any respect from me. That's why I get annoyed when people keep popping up on like old videos I made and like, oh, you're just a hater. Candace, she's really, I'm like, no, Candace, again, it profits off of, ostracizing black folks for white audiences. I don't care how many all of a sudden now, because she wants to make music references and talk about how black people are talented and Michael Jackson is. That's fine, but that ain't got nothing to do with, again, your thoughts and viewpoints on reparations and Juneteenth is ghetto and saying Breonna Taylor deserved what she got and she brought it on herself. Those are things I don't forget. Right. So, no, you can sit here and all of a sudden give us some little popsicle ice cream topping conversations, but I don't, the North remembers. So, no. All right. Let's see. Somebody said, and none of them know the Bible because they don't even read it. Remember when Trump was first running and he said his favorite book was the Bible? And then the guy's like, oh, well, can you tell us a favorite verse? I can't. They're just all so special and important to me. 2 Corinthians, right? Shut up, please. All right. Yes, I'm sorry. Their God is whiteness. Let's see. Blissed Out said, and then when you call them out, you get labeled anti-Semitic. Now, I will say what has been interesting is because, and I said this back in maybe October, November 2023. This is when everything happened with Israel and Gaza. And I started talking about how, for years, people be afraid to ever criticize Israel because, again, you automatically get thrown into the anti-Semitic bubble automatically. And it's like, I just always feel like, well, if y'all had this kind of energy for anti-blackness, we'd be all right because they can just say anything about us. And when we call it out, we're overreacting. But the point that I want to make is what I also saw that was interesting because social media posts everything. I saw a clip it was a clip from The View, and it was Sunny talking about how she was stating criticism of Netanyahu is not anti-Semitism. And I was like, dang, we're really coming into a new arena because a statement like that 10 years ago would have had her contract canceled on it. Well, we'll actually see when it's time for renewal. I think they come back in September. Her contract would have been canceled 10 years ago. So it's interesting to see the narrative starting to shift where people are like, okay, you can actually have a nuanced conversation about Israel and not it become a one blanket statement, right? Because the conversation is you have Israel, the country, and then you have Israeli, the people, you have Judaism, the religion, and you have people who identify as Jewish as both an ethnicity and a race. And for some reason, it's just all been put into one magical bubble where it's like you put all these people in the same conversation, and all of these folks move very differently. So it's interesting to see where the conversation has shifted and just the national attitude about a lot of things. Do I anticipate a blue wave in 2026? I don't know, because I don't know. I still don't think white people are mad enough. Honestly, I don't think they're mad enough. I think people are annoyed and pissed off, but a lot of people are annoyed and pissed off about individual aspects that affect their personal lives, but they're not mad about the bigger picture. And a lot of them would continue to still let the bigger picture take place if, as long as they're good. Even with these conversations of like what's happening with immigration and people being snatched up off the streets, one of the things that's very interesting to me is as I'm seeing some of these people who are in the Latino community that voted for Trump and, they're doing interviews because somebody, a relative has been deported. I keep seeing these conversations about, oh, I voted for him, I'm so mad. And then my question really becomes, because it seems like a lot of these folks, and this is not a blanket statement, this is just what I'm observing with some of the people that I've seen from interviews. A lot of them, if their family members were to be returned, they would stop fighting. They're just making sure they're good. And I think that's one of the reasons why the United States as a whole is still in the problem that it's in. We're still in a very individualistic society. And so, again, white folks aren't mad enough about a lot of what's happening. They don't mind seeing the cuts to snap and that stuff because they think it's actually hitting us when in reality, there's more white folks don't snap than us. But for a lot of them, they feel like as long as black folks ain't getting something or somebody's beneath us, we're fine. So we'll be drop dead poor. But if somebody's just a little bit more poor than us, that means we're doing good. And there's a lot of people who hold on to that mentality. And so they're not mad enough. Right? If this were a different administration that looked a little different, but did exactly what they've done, this country would be burning. There would be so many attempts, if you know what I mean, if you catch my drift, on whoever would have been in charge. There would be so many articles of impeachment being thrown out. There would be a whole lot more January 6th taking place. But again, a lot of white folks aren't mad with this. They're fine with it. They feel like it don't affect them, so on, so be it. And so, yeah, white America's not mad enough. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think if anybody is smart, put your money on millennials and bringing in Gen Z, more Gen Z, getting them to be a bit more active. The problem is I just don't think younger people are a large enough voter demographic yet. But then again, what gets weird is then when we talk about the Gen Z aspect, there's a segment of Gen Z that tended to really vote and stand behind some of this. And then Gen X was interesting because Gen X is the only generation that actually voted at a higher rate for the nonsense versus the boomers, versus millennials, versus Gen Z. I don't know what was in the water. Now, again, that's just in general. It's not broken down by race, but we know which demographic did that. So, yeah, conversation for another day. Let's see. Thank you, Loli 3D. The U.S. don't want to invest in people because they don't want to invest in all asterisk black people cough. That's really what it is, right? I think of even, we talked about it before, DC, Baltimore, there was an opportunity at one point to extend like Metro rail service and like just like subway routes and everything like that from like Baltimore County all the way, I want to say to PG County, but the residents voted against it because it was like they didn't want those people coming into their regions, right? I'll come back and verify that on a different video, but it's we've seen that take place so many times where again people will sabotage themselves if they feel that it's going to create an opportunity for groups that they don't want. Even Henry County, Georgia, that's like where McDonough and stuff is. when I tell you them residents were so pissed when there was a possibility for a bus route because they were like, they didn't want the people from DeKalb County and what's all the counties what's all the counties around Atlanta Metro? Fulton County, they didn't want the people coming to Henry County. I'm like, there is nobody in Fulton or DeKalb County who wants to go to Henry County. First of all, Henry County is so far from everything. There's nothing out there but houses. Everything that they want is already in the city. But people always think that they got, more than the others. So they don't want the people coming over here taking the bus in our neighborhood. There's nothing here. It's just subdivisions. Relax. Man. So there's that. Somebody said people got to feel it more. They're not mad enough. They're not. Joe Mario said Democrats are winning individual races right now, and so remember, people voted blue down ballot and then didn't vote Kamala. We'll see. We will see. I do think, God willing, people will kind of just get. I think, especially for you keep seeing a narrative about millennials where they keep saying millennials have just never known peace, right? And to be fair, every generation has lived through, if you're a baby boomer, you've lived through everything millennials have lived through. But I think the reason people make this argument is because, at least for some baby boomers, even though they had to experience the Cold War and, the fear of the Great White Flash, they had some moments of prosperity and tranquility where there wasn't a whole lot of craziness happening. And so I think and when they got into their adulthood, because of the work done by the generation before them, as far as their parents, as far as the silent generation, and even maybe the greatest generation, as far as maybe the grandparents, there were lots of protections and stuff that were there that allowed a lot of baby boomers to thrive into adulthood. And this is why when we watched a lot of sitcoms from back in the day, you could watch something like a Married with Children, and Al Bundy worked at a shoe store and was the only income. And his wife, Peggy, didn't work. And he had 2 kids and a dog. And he had this very nice house, had a nice car. And he could do all of that on one income. That's never been the experience for millennials. Millennials' first trip into adulthood was the Great Recession. And for older millennials, it would have been a dot-com boom and a recession of about 2000. And then right after that is boom, there's 9/11. Boom, we go into the Iraq War. Boom, we have dot-com bubble burst that's a few years earlier than that. Then you have the predatory lending situation. The housing market collapses around 2007. You have the Great Recession of 2008 and everything else like that. Boom. It's the Obama years. Here comes the Tea Party. They start screwing stuff over on purpose and pretty much working to sabotage any element of progress, so on and so forth. And at this point, millennials are getting older. So they just never known peace, right? And then right when things almost get decent, then Orange Man gets in there. Then we get the pandemic. Then we get another recession. It's just millennials have just never really quite had any peace as adults. Gen Z isn't going to be in the same boat, unfortunately. People got to feel it. I think hopefully people are tired of this nonsense. But I think we get distracted by the normalization of entertainment where I think it takes focus away from the reality of what is. When things happen, we escape to our vices, whether that's different shows or I know for me, I barely watch the news anymore just for my own peace of mind. So I still keep up because I have to, because I have this channel, but even myself, when stuff is crazy, I'm like, I don't have time. So when everything was happening with Israel sending the bombs to Iran and I was in Miami, I was like, you know what? I'm in Miami. I'm enjoying myself. Nope. Not doing it right. I will wait till I get back home. Right. That's how most Americans are moving at the moment. So, it's a layered conversation. There's not a one size fits all solution. We'll just see. Right. Okay. Thank you, Bryson Stanley. Gwinnett County, Cherokee County, Cobb County. We are not claiming Forsyth County because I look Forsyth. Even though I heard there's black people that live there now. That's that county that was on the Oprah show where it used to be the all-white segment, right? Brooke Smith said, I'll never forgive Larry Hogan for passing on constructing the Red Line. They ended up using the money to improve the roads in Baltimore County. Yeah, so you see so much happening. Okay, I want to keep going because I got a little bit more going. Oh, Omega, that's a good question. How do you plan for your future when everything is so precarious? I just keep moving anyway. Because if I were to just stop out of fear of what may happen in the future, then are you really living? And I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what, just live. Whatever happens is going to happen. You just got to figure out how to work your way through it. That doesn't really sound very motivating or inspiring, but that's the reality. I am not one to live life in fear of nothing, which is why, since about 2022-ish, I've been in this era of just saying yes to everything and doing that That's what ended up getting me to do the short film. That's what ended up connecting me with the last person that shot my last music video. That ended up, I did some shows in the last few weeks. That kind of did the shit. Like, I'm just learning to say yes to stuff because what's the worst that could happen? That's just where I'm at right now in life. So, as crazy as things are, I'm not about to sit here and hide in a bunker and be woe is me, gloom and doom, and wait for the great white flash. If the great white flash hits, it'll hit while I'm doing something great. That's where I'm at. Okay? All right. Somebody said Gen X was not a walk in the park. I don't think it's a walk in the park for any generation. Like I said, I think every generation, all those things that I just named for millennials, Gen X would have experienced that in the same boat. I think for Gen X often gets sandwiched in between the boomers and millennials, and it's almost kind of like they're almost not in the conversation. But in my opinion, I think Gen X and millennials have a very similar experience, especially younger Gen Xers. They're kind of in that exact same boat because they would have experienced, Gen X would have experienced Reaganism or Reaganomics, right, during their adulthood. The inflation of college prices, the 600% increase in bankruptcies, the increase of the U.S. deficit, the crack era, the war on drugs. So every generation has some nonsense they've had to deal with. Like, you know what I mean? Right. Okay. Speaking of religion, this will be real quick too. This is coming out of Texas, right? Now, in Louisiana, we saw that a judge outruled this where they were stating that the Ten Commandments needed to be posted everywhere. Now, in Texas, they've actually signed a law where the Ten Commandments need to be, posted in every public school. And Texas Governor Abbott signed that bill, right, in every classroom. Here's my thing again. I have no beef with what people believe spiritually. Do what you got to do, especially in this area. Everybody needs something to give them some element of hope. But again, all of this is performative. Like I said earlier during the Ted Cruz segment, a lot of these people are not even really Christians. They only use Christianity to oppress other groups of people. They use the Bible to weaponize and paint other people to be the boogeyman, or when they want to do something that disenfranchises another group, then they utilize and latch onto religion as a justification. Whether they do that to people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community, whether they do that to Black and minority group, like every group. Every now and then they want to pull the Bible into something when they want to do something terrible. When they need to justify why they're cutting, funding for a food program, they're like, oh, well, the Bible says that a man who doesn't work doesn't eat. Like, they will find a reason, right? So it's performative to me because, again, how are you so holier than thou? But we just saw in 2023, specifically for Texas, where that same governor eliminated the ordinances that required water breaks for construction workers, specifically during periods of extreme heat. They can't even get water breaks no more. You outlawed that. But you're so Christian. Cut the bullshit. Like, please, right? And again, I'm somebody who, this is a country where in the Constitution there's separation of church and state. If we're going to have that element where you can start imposing your religious views within policy, then fine. Let every other religion do the same thing. Let the people who are Muslim, who are Hindu, who are Buddhist, who believe in everything else, Rastafari, let them all put their stuff in policy and see how comfortable you are. Like, it's unfair to impose what you believe on other people. Everybody's supposed to have free will to believe in what they want, but it's not supposed to be something that's mandated into every daily experience. It's even to the point where we're seeing legislation where, again, doctors now, I forgot which state it is, depending on the political views of their patient, can opt out of taking care of somebody. You get shot in the head, you go to the emergency room, and you can't even breathe straight. They ain't trying to ask you if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Right, you done got shot in the head. Your nerves and everything all out of shock. You can't even make the D sound anymore, right? And they're like, nope, now operating on you. That's crazy to me. What? We'll see how that goes. I want to go to a bigger story here. We've talked about this with Georgetown, but we're now seeing this coming out of Harvard. I put the link in the description for you guys to read the full article. I'm just going to pull 3 pieces of the article. We're not going to read the whole thing because it is a very extensive read. But this is just about the ties of slavery to Harvard University and just a lot of universities within the United States. So let me pull these on up. Let's make sure I got these open so I don't set myself up like last time. You know what's a very millennial thing? Like, I feel like every millennial that uses like Zoom or does anything, anytime they have to share the screen, we have to narrate what we're doing as we share the screen. Okay, let me share my screen here. All right, and I'm just gonna pull up a little something here. Okay. Anyway, let's make sure I got the right one. Okay, so this is coming out of Harvard. Now, again, this is from The Guardian. I'm not reading the full article, but I did pull 3 segments that I think we can talk about. All right, so and this was about Harvard pretty much summoned somebody to do research about the correlation between people who were enslaved and their ties to Harvard University, right? So that's what this article is about, right? And what ended up happening is, as the person did the research, they ended up getting fired, right? There were so many people who were enslaved that came up. They just say, just cancel the whole project. We ain't talking about it no more. It's mind your business, right? Okay. Excuse me. I had Pepsi earlier. Lord. Okay. Though it contradicts a common perception of colonial New England, enslaved people were brought to work in northern cities in North America as well. In her book, New England Bound, the historian Wendy Warren records the remarks of one European traveler who noted in 1687, 1867 is the year Howard was founded, that there is not a house in Boston, however small may be its means, that has not one or two enslaved people. As the country's oldest and wealthiest university, Harvard's history is inextricable from the history of transatlantic slavery. The enslaved labored in campus buildings, university presidents and professors own people forced into bondage. And the school's wealth grew through a circle of donors intimately connected to the plantation system in the Caribbean, the American South, and the trafficking of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic. Harvard began informally to research its relationship to slavery as early as 2007, when the history professor Seven Beckert started leading undergraduate research seminars, such as the one Chin took in 2016. Chin is the person that the article is about. Then Harvard president Drew Faust acknowledged the university was directly complicit in slavery, and in 2022, the university released an official report, Harvard and a Legacy of Slavery, which detailed the history of more than 100 pages. All right, let me go to the next page. There I go narrating what I'm doing. Damn, I closed it. Whoops, my bad. All right, next page. All right, the second part I want to share. In the winter of 2022, before Harvard report was made, Cellini said he was approached by former president of the school, Larry Bacow, and Dean Tomiko Brown Nagin, who asked if he could do the same thing for Harvard. That is in response to the research that came out of Georgetown that we've talked about some years back, where it turned out that specifically for Georgetown, in order to stay open, pretty much, Georgetown had to sell off, I want to say 272. Yep. In order to raise money for the university back in the mid 1800s, they sold off 272 people who were enslaved in order to keep the university afloat. That's what that's in reference to. So when they're talking about Harvard asking him to do the same study, it's an extension of what happened with Georgetown University, right? Asked if he could do the same thing for Harvard. When he started the research, Harvard had already identified the names of 70 people that had been enslaved with ties to the university. Over the course of the past 3 years, working alongside American ancestors, the country's preeminent geological institute, Cellini and his researchers have identified more than 900 people that have been enslaved by university affiliates, faculty, staff, and people in leadership positions, and nearly 500 of their direct living descendants. It wasn't long after work began to pick up steam that Cellini started running into trouble. In March of 2023, he said he was asked to meet with the project's executive director, Rashana Moore Evans, and the Harvard staff member overseeing the initiative, the public health professor and vice provost for special projects, Sarah Blaish. I was about to say the B word from a second ago. These informal meetings were held in a boardroom in a student center, a tall glass building overlooking the gates of Harvard Yard. It was here and during an extended phone calls that Cellini claims he was told repeatedly by Blaish not to find too many descendants. At one point, the fear was expressed that if we found too many descendants, it would bankrupt the university, he said. All right, I got one more to share. Now the foolery here. Oh, good. I didn't narrate myself. Boom. Exactly. Okay, here we go. This is a bit further down. This is with regard to one of the people who was actually tied to the university through slavery. Lloyd's ancestor, 7 generations back, Cuba Vassal, was 3 years old when she was forcibly moved from Antigua to a suburb of Boston, along with her family by Isaac Royal Jr. in 1737. The Royals were the largest slave-owning family in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, owning nearly 70 enslaved people who labored on a 500-acre plantation just north of Boston, as well as controlling more than 100 people on their plantation in Antigua. Before long, Lloyd's ancestors were transferred to another wealthy Cambridge family. You guys know that name, Cambridge. The Vassals, for whom they labored in an elaborate Georgian Mason known as the Longfellow House, near the campus of the then-growing Harvard University. The Vassals owned plantations in Jamaica where more than 1,000 people were enslaved. John Vassal was a Harvard graduate along with his brother Louis, who once paid for a portion of his tuition with a large barrel of sugar, one of the most lucrative commodities produced by enslaved people. Cuba's original enslaver, Isaac Royale Jr., didn't have any direct ties to Harvard while he was living, but he endowed a professorship in his will, likely to ensure his legacy would live on as a member of the colonial elite. The seal of Harvard Law School was the royal family crest until 2016, when students protested to demand its replacement. The royal professorship was retired in 2022. All right. Anyway, so getting to all of that, this goes back to the larger conversations of when we're talking about generational wealth. And this is why, again, I say people like to erase and hide conversations of history. History always brings about the conversation of origins. And when we get to origins, you find out about different atrocities and when they took place and what happened. But they always lead to questions of why and what was cause and effect. And so when you look at a place like a Harvard, which is a school that has, multi-$100 billion endowments, right? Sitting on money galore, money on top of money. That's when we're talking about the conversation of generational wealth accumulated. And so when you're looking at a lot of these elite Ivy schools, they have so many ties to, again, slavery. And so when people are always like, "Oh, why reparations? I wasn't there." Again, we're talking about a compound interest that was built upon the backs of Black free labor, right? And then on top of that, a place like Harvard, I want to say with everything that's happening now, but again, you have these schools that not only utilize Black bodies for their own leverage and for their own commerce, but then became extremely selective about who could come into these institutions later down the line, making it virtually impossible for certain groups to even get into there after they literally use those same groups to build their platforms, right? Interesting. And so it just goes to show, really go back and read that article. It's a great read. It has so many details just about how all of this is connected. And this goes back to what I was saying at one point in a different conversation when we even just talked the conversation of Black business. I think what people tend to forget is a lot of these major corporations and these massive multi-billion-dollar companies, a lot of them got their early starts way back in the 1700s, 1800s, through, again, conversations and elements of slavery. And the wealth that was accumulated during that era helped to create what you call industry, which would later lead to corporation and larger companies. And one of the reasons why when we talk a lot of Black businesses, why a lot of times they don't get the luxury to ever break out of mom and pop and break into industry and eventually make it to corporate is because, again, the seeds were already planted for a lot of these larger corporations that have a monopoly on so many industries that it's almost, and I'm not going to say impossible because I don't want to kill anybody's dream, and anything is possible. And again, we don't talk about race on this country to just sit and or on this channel to just sit and complain and make it woe is me, I can never do anything. It's more so a conversation that, in spite of what has taken place, in spite of what is documented, in spite of everything you MFs have done, we still gonna do everything we need to do. But just know that while we're doing it, these are all the things that you guys did to be in our way. So either stand out of our way or support or shut up. That's kind of the move for me, right? And so again, that's the larger conversation with everything. So go back and read that article. It's not a 10-minute read. It's not that long, but great detail. And again, it's not just Harvard. It's tied to so many universities. There's a whole research about there's currently 100 universities that are doing a research project where they're trying to find their ties to slavery as well. So it's much bigger, but just understand that our entire upper education or higher education infrastructure is rooted in enslavement. Right? And now that we have demographics of people who have hoarded all the wealth and gotten everything through their pedigrees by association with some of these universities that some of them really didn't earn their way into. They just got into it because their parents were rich, or, like a George Bush, was a C student and got into Yale, and it was only because of who his daddy was, right? You get all those kind of people, and they get in and then they close the door behind them. And then they want to strip away stuff, and then they want to start whacking things. And so we got so much going on, y'all. I swear. Which leads me to my next part. Stephen Miller. I'm going to play this audio clip really quick because it ties into this conversation as well. All right? And this is important because this is exactly what we're talking about. Take note of what he says. All right, Stephen, come on. Say what you need to say. Do it now. Why is this thing being slow? Let me hook to my Wi-Fi. All right. All right, Stephen.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding. So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology. For any nation to be successful, it cannot teach its children to hate themselves and to hate their country. So these are a few of the areas in which President Trump has fought the cancerous communist woke culture that was destroying this country, where we were led to believe that men were women, that women were men, that racial discrimination was good, that merit was bad, and that safety and physical security mattered less than the feelings of liberal ideologues.
All right. So, getting to all of that, when we talk about, again, attacks to education, I want us to take note of one thing that he really harped on, where he said that the kids were taught to hate themselves. Who do you think he's talking about? Where do these conversations come from? Because the narrative of children being taught to hate themselves comes from that whole conversation of, boom, when we actually really start talking about the real history of things, it does not paint the United States in a great light. And unfortunately, it exposes the truth and the history of a lot of white Americans. And so rather than acknowledging the faults of America and saying, hey, this is where we were, this is where we're going, they recalibrate the conversation and say, oh no, you're teaching white kids to feel bad about themselves. When reality, and it goes back to what I was saying, one of the challenges that has always existed when it comes to talking about race is that race is a conversation from a structural standpoint on a macro scale. White Americans individualize everything because they center themselves in all things. So rather than, because I'll say this, growing up, well, first of all, we barely had any Black history in school. Like I said, Black history for me was slavery to Oprah in 40 pages. And then we watched the movie Long Walk Home or something. That was about it. But in that little bit of history they would give us, it was never presented in a way that made white people feel bad for being white. It just painted and said, hey, this is where the country was at the time. This is what they did. There weren't white kids I went to school with that felt bad for being white. If anything, they felt empowered by everything, right? You know how many fights used to be in the hallway during Black History Month because white kids used to be joking like, yeah, we used to own you guys. So please, I don't want to hear anything about white kids feeling bad about themselves. But they're doing that, and it goes back to what I was saying about the conversation of origin. When you get to history and you look at the origin, it creates the conversation of why. But where I didn't go earlier, when we get to that why, and you understand the why, the question becomes, how do you remedy the issue? We know what the remedy is, and it's something that nobody wants to give us. And it's something that nobody wants to attain. And it also means changing and recalibrating what that status quo is. White America is never going to do that. So they would rather regress and do everything in their power to ensure that we just lie, that we just erase history. This is why you can yank Jackie Robinson out of the military museums and with compromising what's taking place at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And all of a sudden, things are being criminalized. This is why even the idea of getting rid of the Department of Education. The Department of Education does not create curriculums in public schools. The Department of Education works to ensure that all children receive an adequate education through proper funding. So if a state does not meet the requirements to adequately supply the needs to every student in their school, the federal government, aka the Department of Education, steps in to make sure that the schools are funded to make sure that they can feed the kids or make sure that they can afford to pay salaries to the teachers. That's their job. It has nothing to do with indoctrinating the woke left, this indoctrination, communism, blah, 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 into the children. By the way, y'all need to keep an eye out for Stephen Miller and his forehead. Now, I know I got a forehead too, but he got a way bigger one than mine. Mine just is like, it's like tall. His is tall and goes way back here. Okay. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, they know what they're doing. They like to use those trigger words. They love to use words like socialism, communism, because the average American can't explain what it is. They just know it's a bad thing. So they'll utilize those terms and paint everything, right? And so even you notice he started talking about merit. Do we really want to have a conversation about merit with this current administration and this current cabinet? Did we see who was selected to be who the person who's in charge of counterterrorism? Oh, I got that boy's picture. Where's he at? I'm gonna talk about some damn merit, please. Here we go. Right here. This one here. Can we be for real? Chris Murphy. No, that's not his name. I'm sorry. What's this little boy's name? Is it Thomas Fagate? Anyway, this boy is 22. He ain't never had a real job in his life. He gets elected to become in charge of, whatever he is, director of counterintelligence. I don't want to talk about, like, first of all, this kid will throw up on a roller coaster, please, right? So cut the crap. So when we're talking merit, which they love to latch on to, merit is something that's weaponized against everybody who's not a white male. Because the perception is that, again, like I've said, white people see themselves as the standard of everything. And when you see yourself as the standard, you feel like you never have to work on yourself. You feel like you never have to evolve. You feel like you don't have to learn everything because you already think you know everything. And so when anybody else disrupts that bubble of delusion that a lot of these folks live in, then all of a sudden here comes the merit conversation. This is why, you know, when it comes to the conversations of affirmative action, they're like, oh, it's because all these unqualified Black people, Mexican people, Native American folks are taking our seats and so on and so forth. And we're literally watching a bunch of idiots run the country right now. We want to talk about merit. You got the wrestling lady in charge of education. She doesn't even know what AI is. She called it A1. She's thinking it's a steak sauce. It was crazy when they asked her about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you know she didn't know what that was, right? Just chaos. Just they got anybody doing it. You got Headset, the alcoholic, in charge of the military, right? Y'all put RFK in front of HHS, right? The conspiracy theorist who's not a doctor, who has no background in health, anything. He was a lawyer. He's in charge of our well-being. You just watched him dismantle all of what you call like the vaccine panel scientists, where, you know, as children, we're given a certain amount of vaccines coming up because, damn, you know, who wants to get the mumps and the measles? That would be really fun, and whatever else they got. You know, you got people who don't even do research, just go in there. I wish I could tell y'all some of the ish I've heard from people that work in some of these places that just are like, if you only knew how crazy it is here right now. But I'm not trying to mess up anybody else's career. But damn it, we have a lot of idiots in charge right now. So when I hear merit, I cut the crap. I don't want to hear it, because everybody knows, especially when we're talking about Black folks, we've already been conditioned to be twice as good to be considered a fourth as worthy. So cut the crap about merit. And so, again, you just got any and everything going on right now. And that's why I'm kind of like, even with the conversations around Juneteenth, which was going to be my next subject anyway, it's interesting. You know, you saw Orange Man make his statement, because all of a sudden now he got a problem with holidays. And he said, we have too many holidays where people aren't working. And how many federal holidays are there? Like 11? Hold on, I just want to make sure I'm right. How many federal holidays are there in a year? 11 federal holidays in a year. We got 365 days a year, 366 on a leap year. There are 11 federal holidays. He wants to claim that we just got too many days where people ain't working, as if this man does not go golf every day. And if we want to be honest, when you're talking about federal holidays, most people don't get all 11 of the days. You got about 3 of them that are floating holidays. Juneteenth, you know, they made that a floating one. I want to say Veterans Day, and I think Indigenous Peoples Day / Columbus Day. The 3 are normally floating holidays where employees that do get those federal days off can pick one of those days to be off, but you ain't getting all 3. So cut the crap, right? So it's just like, you got a problem. There's this whole narrative of control, right? Elon had that same energy when he started doing the Doge thing. He made all the federal workers go back 5 days a week. People who didn't even work in the state. They live in Iowa. They got a job at a federal office somewhere in Florida that hired them remotely, and now they're being told they got to come in or quit their job, like, or be fired. Like, make it make sense. But anyway, back to Juneteenth. And so one of the things that I felt, because I personally, as much as I love it being a federal holiday, I still wish Juneteenth was just something that was kind of in-house, because now it's to me, it's ours. A lot of people already didn't really know what it was to begin with, but now, because it's a part of the national conversation, people utilize it as an opportunity to disrespect it, right? I think you guys may have seen that clip of the auto body shop where there's that Black woman sitting in there, and then the white folks were talking about Juneteenth and saying some BS. So she got pissed off and was like, give me my car back, it bounced and everything like that. But you're kind of seeing that. How many, like, I saw so many conversations online, white people talking about, what is Juneteenth? This shouldn't be a holiday, da 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 da. Meanwhile, they're off. You sitting on the comfort of your couch on your day off on Juneteenth complaining about it. And it's like, again, that conversation of centering everything, making it about you. That's the issue that I have. Now, I understand it was a nice symbolic gesture from the previous administration. Lovely. But I think some things just need to be ours. Everything is not for everybody, because, again, it makes a space for things to be disrespected. I had the same opinions on Lift Every Voice and Sing being sung at NFL games. I think that should be for us. I don't want them singing it at the NFL games, because I'm tired of white people thinking it's a moment for them to go and complain and think that they've lost something. How come they have there is no something? Oh, y'all shut up. Like, everything ain't got to be for everybody. Like, some things I think we should keep in-house. And it also makes me also sometimes fear for safety, because I'm not putting it in the universe, but you just know how people move in this country. And when people are filled with hatred and are vile and have a chip on their shoulder and feel like they've lost something, they tend to take it out on people that are celebrating and live in a space of joy. And if there's one thing that I've learned in this country, people hate to see Black folks having a good time. They cannot stand for us to enjoy ourselves. They hate to see us having too much fun, right? Anyway, I think it's important when we're talking about education and everything. This is in regard to the Ten Commandments crap in the school. Well, I shouldn't call it crap, but the Ten Commandments legislation in Texas, the Stephen Miller stuff with the Department of Education, even the conversations around Juneteenth. This is why I think it's also important that, in addition to what you may get in your public schools, you are going to have to teach your kids and even your grown relatives our history, right? You're going to have to utilize independent media. I always really, especially when it comes to like keeping up with current world affairs, I recommend, even on serious, like I think Urban View does a really great job of having like a lot of shows that really put information out there. Like Larry Daniel Favors has an excellent show that comes on in the morning. There's all these different shows that come on there that talk about Black politics, and it's not a very like one-sided what you would get on mainstream networks. It's people who are living through the daily whatever, and this is where they're at, or they've done the research, or they're tired, or they're on the ground doing the work. And this is where we're at. This is the local election you need to pay attention to. This is the candidate you might want to keep an eye on. This is what's happening economically. This might be where you want to move your money. Folks are going to really have to start like hunkering in and being in what I call community. Because we're currently living in a country that hates us. We're currently living in a country that's doing everything to reverse any element of progress that has been made. Mind you, the progress was minimal. The progress was just progress to be treated decently. It wasn't progress to be treated like kings and queens and be given a red carpet rollout. It was the progress to just be tolerated. That's what's being taken away. We're not even being tolerated anymore. So I really believe that the idea of community is everything right now, which is why it's kind of like lock in, right? With each other, with people that mean well for the community, which is why I'm always saying kind of disassociate and divest from people in the collective that work towards the detriment of the collective, or that sell out the collective for a profit, or that lie or do things without integrity and then gaslight us and make it seem like all of us are crazy. There's some folks we just don't need to be running behind. There's some folks we don't need to be listening to. If there are people that have active platforms that purposely put out disinformation to cause confusion or work as agents of chaos, why are you following that? That includes the Shade Room. That includes Baller Alert. I'll throw Neighborhood Talk in there. I'll throw Hollywood Unlocked in there. All of them, sorry. A lot of that is chaos. And I think a lot of that also plays a role into, Breakfast Club as well. I think a lot of that plays a role into why, even when we're talking about collective thought within the Black community, we got so much confusion, because you got a whole lot of people moving as experts with surface level information on stuff they know nothing about. But because they are public figures or they have large platforms, people take them as law. People take them as reality, and there comes all these distractions. We also got to get out of the habit of thinking that celebrities can save us, or that celebrities can be the voice of our liberation. I've always said that. Every election, we already know what happens. Celebrities come out of nowhere with these stupid and terrible takes, right? And they lead us into nonsense. Then when stuff hits the fan, they're nowhere to be found. They're silent. Or they'll just call us broke. Y'all some haters. Y'all just mad because you broke. Just saying. Be careful what you keep aligning with. All right, let's see here. Somebody said a shoe salesman's salary will get you a one-bedroom apartment if you had a roommate. That's in regard to the show Married with Children. Oh, that's a great point. Maverick Lee said, so the Ten Commandments is relevant to all three of the Abrahamic religions. It actually is. I will say the Quran, the Torah, and the Bible all have the Ten Commandments, but that is not rooted in all three. That's rooted in the idea of Christianity and painting everything else to be crazy. I will say that. But yeah. Poison Ivy said, gosh, I do that too. Follow by. Can everyone see my screen? That's me. When I be leading them little conversations and stuff. All right, now here we go. I'm sharing. And you know how you do, like you extend and drag out your words. And I'm just gonna click here and share. And okay, can everybody see my screen? All right. It might not even be a millennial thing. I think it might be a millennial and a Gen X thing. Gen Z be laughing at us. All right. Let's see. Somebody said Harvard should allow a whole lot more Black folks or kids to enroll with for free ride. Now they did have that. I know they had like free tuition at one point for a lot of Black students. I don't know if that's still a thing anymore. Let's see. Yeah, Stephen Miller. Whatever. Oh, Rania W. I did see that. Did we see how they appointed 4 civilians to lieutenant generals or something? Yeah, and then all of them are. Ooh, that dang. What is that? Planeteer, whatever that crap is that has all our information. Ooh, my God, make it make sense. Let's see. Oh yeah, RFK swimming in that Rock Creek water like this. Nope. I was hoping he'd catch something. That'll teach him. But he'll just say some kind of conspiracy against him, but whatever. Yes, they hate seeing Black joy. They can't stand it. Somebody said, I love Urban View, especially Karen Hunter. Yeah, I like Karen Hunter. She do be cussing people out on her show. That'd be kind of funny. Somebody said, I don't celebrate the 4th, but I definitely will be enjoying some time off and going out of town to Philly. To be honest, I think a lot of Black folks, we don't really celebrate the 4th. That's just a cookout day. I don't think a lot of us are thinking of 1776 on the 4th of July. We're looking at it as, oh, thank God I got a day off, right? Get a cookout, enjoy some time with the family, right? Okay, moving on. We also have some new countries that have been recommended for a travel ban. The following countries: Angola, Antigua, Barbuda, Benin, Bhutan, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Cambodia, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Democratic Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Dominica, Ethiopia, Egypt, Gabon, the Gambia, Ghana, Kazakhstan, Liberia. Liberia is an interesting one because we're supposed to be allied and tight. That's an interesting one there. Okay. Malawi, Mauritania, Nigeria, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia. Now, what did they do? Sao Tome and Principe, I hope I said that right. Senegal, South Sudan, Syria, Tanzania, Tonga, Tuvalu, Uganda, Vanuatu, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. It's interesting that most of those countries are Black countries, by the way. I said, but the Orange Man who claims he loves us so much, these people are showing y'all where they stand. Just want y'all to know. What is going on? Man, hot mess. And what you gotta do? They just name every country that ain't white, put them on the ban list. At this point, some folks gonna be stuck. Whatever. Anyway, what I also did want to talk about, what I found interesting, the assassination that took place in Minnesota that kind of came and went in the same day. Right, that was with the state lawmaker Melissa Hortman, who was killed, and then her husband was also shot and killed. And then John Hoffman, who was also a state congressman, and his wife were also shot, but they survived. And the person also shot the dog. I said, damn, you know it's Val when they go after the dogs. The guy's name is Vance Butler. He was also an outspoken evangelical Christian. You see, I told you that God is whiteness. Who traveled to Africa to tell his, faith story. And in at least one sermon potentially question American morals. But the point that I want to get at with all that is, to me, it's interesting that all that just blew over so quickly. Like, again, when I say we're living in a period of extremities, we're living in such a period that you can have lawmakers be murdered because one of them got shot. The couple that survived, the two of them together were shot 17 times. We're now at a space where that can take place, and because we have so many other things taking place, it's just like a scrolling ticker, and we got to talk about the other nonsense. But I think this is something that's a little bit more serious because we have normalized the idea of painting, especially, this is coming from Orange Man and his folks, painting anybody who opposes Orange Man and his policies or what he stands behind as enemies of America, and normalizing just their nonsense, even with him pardoning the people who tried to kidnap the Michigan governor, normalizing that, pardoning the January 6th folks, who are now, a lot of them are ICE agents. That's why ICE is having such a great time going and snatching the folks, because these are disgruntled white men that couldn't get jobs anywhere else because they thought their pardon meant that they could get jobs, but that still stays on their record because, again, this wasn't, these weren't like commutes and everything else, or commuted sentences and everything else like that. So they're having a great time going and snatching the people with their little bags and shades on. They feel super, super empowered. And now you have people who aren't even members of ICE dressing up as ICE and going out on the street trying to snatch up folks. For anybody who's not a white male, look out. Even white women getting snatched up, right? Because they don't know if she speaks Spanish or not. And so it's interesting. And then when you saw the vile responses from people like J.D. Vance and Orange Man as well, it's just that, these moments almost exist in a flash pan because the next crazy thing takes place the next day. To me, that's wild. And again, when you consistently spoon feed the general public this idea that there are good guys and there are bad guys, right? Because to me, there's no such thing. People either have good things they do or terrible things, but the idea of good guys and bad guys from like a childlike manner, like when we were kids and you'd watch all those cartoons and it was the bad guys were trying to destroy the earth. That's literally the way that somebody like Orange Man and his people tend to paint a lot of folks. And they put so much rhetoric out there that everybody's out to get them, or everybody's out to get the average person, and it's starting to create what you call enraged folks. You remember when I talked about punitive entitlement, where I said a lot of times you have people who believe in the idea of punitive entitlement, where if they can't get their way, somebody else must suffer. Or, because of them feeling inconvenienced or not getting what it is that they want, they're going to make life a living hell for somebody else and not feel bad about it. We're in that arena to the point where now people are literally being killed. Like, what? It's a lot going on here. I'm gonna read a few more comments. I need to start winding down because I got a whole lot more. Okay, I'm gonna cut some of this down because we ain't gonna get through all this. All right, it's already 11:35. Okay, let's see here. What up, Natural Empress? Baby Love said our history is very, very important. And that's the thing. And that's why I don't like this whole idea of everybody trying to cap what they can teach about us, because there's so much that we still don't know that we're still learning. And I've always said about learning in general, don't think you know everything. The minute you choose to stop learning is the minute you've stopped evolving. And it's the minute you've plateaued yourself within society, because somebody else will understand things at a greater capacity than you and be able to move in a different manner that becomes more, fruitful and more prosperous than your experience because you chose to limit yourself. That's why I'm always like, you never should stop aiming to learn, right? Oh yeah, Tarian Reloaded. He's definitely a friend to this channel. Yeah, he's good people. I appreciate that he is consistent because he definitely has a video. He got 4 videos a week, right? He is on it. So yeah. Yes, racist travel brands. Where are we at here? What up, Alan? Somebody said, how is he still alive, though? We all know in Minnesota they kill black people for less. Yeah, Minnesota was Minneapolis and George Floyd. Even in their criminality, white privilege is strong in this country. Again, they protect who they want to protect. Some folks get Burger King, some folks get a foot on the neck. So that's the reality. Okay, as far as Tyler Perry, because I ain't spending too much time on it, I'm really not that pressed. But we know at this moment you have a man named Derek Dixon, who is an actor, who is suing him for $260 million. And he's claiming that, it was sexual harassment, a lot of misconduct. I went and read through a lot of the complaint and a lot of what was going on in there. It's a lot. Those are some interesting text messages. The thing that I'll say, somebody like Tyler Perry, a man of his caliber, knowing that you have that kind of power and you're that well known, you think you'd move differently, right? And I think too, and at this point, somebody like him should know what kind of conversation and communication is appropriate with staff or employees. And especially to be fool enough to do and say some of the things that were said in text messages. Now, this is all alleged. We'll see as things progress what's true and what's not. But I was kind of baffled a bit, dang, I didn't think somebody like Tyler Perry would move that confidently in that kind of space with that kind of behavior, seeing that he's such a massive public figure. And when you have that kind of success, it's so easy for somebody to jump in and take it away. So I was like, bruh, Lord, okay. And it goes to a bigger conversation. This is kind of past Tyler Perry, but even that conversation of the casting couch. The issue that I have is when it comes to entertainment, specifically Hollywood, music and everything, it's already an unconventional journey to get into it. It's not like, if you want to be a lawyer, you go to undergrad, you take the you do decent in undergrad, you take the LSAT, you get a nice score, you get into a good law school, right? Make sure that you don't get kicked out of the program in your first year, complete the 3 years of law school, take the bar, and hopefully you graduated at a really high percentage in your class. You graduated from a great law school, and now you can go and get a job. And then the next move is, boom, hopefully I can get, not only into a law firm, but a big law firm. When I get to that law firm, I'm going to give myself 5 years to make partner, and then it's smooth sailing. Like a conventional trajectory. Music, film, television, there is no conventional trajectory, right? Everybody is just trying to figure out how to get in the door. Some people try to do it through different, ways of marketing themselves. Some people try to use social media to build an audience and then move to LA or New York or Atlanta and do it that way. Some folks do independent stuff and just try to get in. Like, everybody's trying to do different things here. For singers, you got the people who pack up, everything they have in their little suitcase and take a Greyhound all the way from Eugene, Oregon and go to LA, and they do all these different things to try to get in. And again, there's no guarantee for success. And so for me, it gets under my skin when people who are in positions of power that can really change somebody's life for the positive take advantage of that. Again, with that Tyler Perry stuff, I can't put him in a jail cell or anything because we don't know what's true and what's not yet. So I'm just going based on what's being reported. In the same way with the Diddy trial and all this other stuff, Diddy's a little bit different. The evidence is like right in your face. But it's just, for me, it gets under my skin because, again, if people knew how much goes into really trying to like break into entertainment and how much people sacrifice and give up, there's so many people that are in their 40s and 50s that have been at it for 20 plus years and they get these different gigs and stuff. But even people who break in and make it, it's not consistent work, right? A lot of people live gig to gig, and you may get a great gig and it's like you might not have work for another 2 or 3 years and everything else like that, but you still have to, and you may have started a family, but you got to figure out, like, there's so much stuff to think about. So again, that just kind of got under my skin a little bit because a lot of people do kind of participate in what you call that casting couch ideology or practice, because anything to get in the door for some people, right? Me, I was never pressed. So, I'll do stuff myself and figure it out. But like, I don't know. We're going to see how that goes. I will say what was also a little disturbing. It was interesting that more folks were more so focused on the conversation of sexuality versus the actual offense. I'm like, I need us to kind of focus on the actual important part, because if we're talking Tyler Perry, people have already had their assumptions anyway. So let's not make that the focus, right? I think the issue is more so, is this somebody who has had a pattern of, possibly sexually harassing or assaulting people in order for them to get their leverage into the door? Because then it brings up the conversation of Christian Keys, and people are like, well, geez, is that who Christian Keys was talking about? Because he was talking about so on and so forth, and then he just kind of, I think that's the bigger conversation, right? That's just where I'm at. So even with the Diddy conversation, when they started having the conversations about male escorts, everybody focused on that part. I'm like, but are we not going to talk? Okay, all right, cool. That's where, if that's the most offensive part to you, I think we need to reorganize and recalibrate what the priorities are. Sexuality is one piece of the conversation, and that to me is not an offense. That's just the reality of how people live or who people are. But if you're talking about utilizing your sexual desires to manipulate or disenfranchise people who are in a position of wanting to have an opportunity, and you hold that opportunity over their head, and you're utilizing the idea of maybe sexual favors or anything else like that and you might not even let them through the door as far as whatever their industry is, as far as gatekeeping. You might just be utilizing or using folks. That's the issue. At least that's where I'm at. Okay, let's see what y'all think. We'll see how this goes. I hate that all that's going down, to be honest. And all that really gets under my skin. We already don't have a lot of folks in these kind of positions of power that look like us that really call shots. And he definitely has been somebody who has been able to really build a massive platform and open his own studio. I'm like, damn. When are some of y'all going? It's sometimes it's also just the company you keep and and who you hang around. Like, damn. Foolish. Not a good look. Somebody said they're shocked that this type of thing hasn't happened sooner. Somebody said a lot of these billionaires think they're untouchable because they have money and status. They need to be held accountable and do the crime regardless of their wealth. That's kind of where I stand. Somebody said he was abused as a child, so why grow up to abuse others? That's what I said when I did my review of the Surviving R. Kelly. I was like, to me, it was so sad that he had such a traumatic childhood. But you sometimes see the pattern that kind of exists. And it's not saying that people who are abused, it doesn't give them a pass to go and do it to somebody else. I always say your trauma and the darker aspects of your experience do not give you justification to go and do it to somebody else, right? But yeah, that was really sad to watch when I saw it. Like him being 14 and just, or even younger than that. I was like, my God, disturbing. All right. Somebody said, I feel weird because Janet has 2 movies with him. Well, guess we ain't getting nobody that I get married 3. All right, which is not important. That's not the purpose of this conversation, by the way. That's my thing, Ms. Cruz. And instead of paying people off, why not just get in a relationship with a consenting adult? Like, that's how it's like when you got that kind of money, this whole you don't even have to be in a relationship. You can literally pay people who will be happy to go and do all the things you want them to do. You give them their little check, they bounce, and they go. That's how escorts work. What do you think half of our senators in Congress be doing? Right? You go right over there to that W Hotel on 14th on the weekend and see some of them girls that go in there and leave with some of these people that work on the Hill. Right? Paid off. Consent. The theme of all of this is consent. Do whatever you want behind closed doors. Just make sure that consent is there. I have no judgment for what anybody does in the bedroom. Do you enjoy and live your life? Because life is too short to be bound by some BS. But consent is the mission here. That's where we're at. All right, moving on. I did get a chance to watch. It's on Netflix. It was kind of boring though. The Titan. That was the documentary about the submersible from 2 years ago when the guy decided, oh, we're gonna go into the little submarine type thing we've made, or the submersible that we've made, and go visit the Titanic. And we'll have a PlayStation controller that only has 5 buttons, and we'll go 3,800 kilometers into the ocean with 5 buttons, and the thing blew up and everybody died. It's an interesting watch. It goes back to show again. Remember what I said about how when people see themselves as a standard or think they know everything, that they can never learn? You see that the main ringleader just refused to listen to anybody. That ego got in the way, that pride, and people died thinking you know everything. You were so cocky. You said, let me go a few miles into the water with a PlayStation controller. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to go a few miles into the water, deep into the water, using a PlayStation controller. It's an interesting watch. SpaceX. I saw they also had an explosion. I know Elon is going through it over there. Again, Elon, the same person who, spearheaded Doge and wanted to cut fraudulent spending and waste and everything else. Again, how much? I think I had it on here. Let me see. I want to make sure you guys know how much of our tax dollars just went to that rocket that exploded. $20 billion to SpaceX out of our tax dollars, right? They've been given $20 billion. I think it's $19.8 billion to SpaceX in federal contracts just for them to keep blowing up rockets. But y'all want to keep cutting waste. You want to cut 260,000 federal employees because you were talking about government waste and fraud, but y'all keep making these rockets that ain't working. Because I can't keep count of how many of these things keep exploding, because they keep exploding, and then y'all have a pep rally to celebrate. Talking about we're just moving closer. Okay, whatever. I saw the article about the Black Marines. They've had the law about, being clean shaven in order to, the few proud of the Marines, in order to be clean shaven. But the challenge that exists with like clean shaven, especially, and I suffer from this, as you can tell, kind of, skin ain't too bad, but I do deal with that. A lot of us Black men have facial hair that coils. So if you shave too close, a lot of times it will coil under the skin and create razor bumps. Now, we got different products and stuff to fight that. But, there's a whole portion that's now saying where if a lot of Black Marines are not able to remedy the razor bumps, they may possibly get discharged from the Marines. Now, personally, because we got a whole lot going on anyway, this might be a good time to get out. But again, for some people, this is their livelihood. And there are people who enjoy protecting and serving the country. I never have smoke for people who are in the military. I think anybody who's willing to go and take a bullet for the livelihood of everybody else, I have a respect for. I just hate that our government tends to manipulate that cause and that mission and send our troops into a lot of nonsense. But so I've seen that story. We'll kind of see how that unfolds. I saw the hot air balloon story out of Brazil, which I think is really sad. It's really scary too. I was reading the details where, some of the people were told to jump as the thing was kind of coming down. I just know that scratched off my list. I will not be getting in anybody's hot air balloon. I was never going to do it to begin with, but there was that repeated Family Matters episode that came on the other day. I really don't really care for Family Matters because it's a show to me that didn't age well, but it was that episode with the hot air balloon. And I was like, oh, maybe this wouldn't be too bad. I changed my mind. You ain't got to worry about it. And I'm pissed because nobody told me that Erykah Badu had an Amazon Prime or Prime Video concert. That nobody told me. And by the time I logged in, it had gone off. So I was a little pissed off about that. The last thing before I get to Billboard, this Target boycott. Now, Target has decided to donate $300,000 to the National Baptist Convention USA. I'll say this now. Yeah, they donated $300,000. Now, a lot of people are whacking the National Baptist Convention, as they should, because again, we're still in a boycott against Target. And my thing is this: receiving money from Target. Target thinks they're slick. This is kind of like an olive branch without pivoting. Because my issue is Target has not pivoted yet. They're still 10 toes down with their ending all the diversity, equity, everything, all like that. They have not changed their minds. They're locked in with it. All right, they doubled down, and now they're trying to maneuver around everybody they pissed off, and try to maneuver and not remedy the very demographic that they pissed off, right? And so I'm kind of like, keep your 300,000, and I'm looking at that demographic, that church event, like, why are y'all taking that money? Because again, we already know there's 7.5 million people who identify as Baptists, and there are 31,000 Baptist churches. $300,000 spread across 31,000 churches is a penny and some change. So it's like, what are y'all doing? Why would you take that money when you already know the conversation is that Target is on some BS? We ain't dealing with them. So why are you taking their dollar? You didn't need that 300,000. You already get that in tithes anyway. Like, what are y'all over there doing? Right? It almost, Al Sharpton almost got cussed out on this channel, but he caught himself, because I saw, you remember he had met with Target, and I was like, who elected you to be well, I guess this was kind of some of his boycott, but I was like, who elected you to determine whether or not we were good with Target yet? We're not. They didn't move yet. Until they move, we don't move. That's kind of how it works, right? But Al Sharpton caught himself, so he kind of pulled it back. I just, these folks. Okay, I'm gonna read some comments, and we're gonna wrap up with the Billboard list that everybody was asking me about, and then I think that will be our night here. All right, so let's see here. Yeah, I was making sure Jamaica wasn't on that travel ban list, because I'm like, I'm supposed to be there at the end of the week. I wouldn't mind being stuck over there at the moment. The U.S. acting crazy, but anyway, where are we at here? Yes, Trump decided to pardon the people who tried to kidnap Michigan governor Gretchen. Crazy. Right, Calvin. The artist entertainment industry in general is a weird business. It's a lot going on over there. And it's crazy now, because like Hollywood is broke, the music industry is broke, TV is broke. You have streaming, that's another part of the conversation. And then AI is also in the conversation. It's a weird time. And LA is having somewhat of like a mass exodus when we're talking about film, because it's just because of the tax code, people are going to Louisiana or to Georgia or Vancouver, BC, or Toronto and different places to do, their film projects, because they can get better tax incentives and write-offs, right? Even when I was at ABFF, there was a filmmaker who was saying, like, they did their film in Louisiana because it was 4 times cheaper than doing it in LA. And so that's where we're at. It's an interesting time. Somebody said a PlayStation 1 controller at that. Okay, because at least PlayStation 2 got remember it has the 2 little round things where you can move the thumb around. Yeah, you can't be that cocky to get in something that can be a life or death machine that you created, and you're so cocky that we just control with a PlayStation. Who thought of that? If you get me to get in something and we're going 2-3 miles into the water, I better see a wall full of buttons. I better like, even when I be getting on a plane, I be peeking in the cockpit. I be trying. I'm like, I better see like 150,000 buttons in there, right? Because there better be a button to fix every problem, right? I don't want to get on anything that only has 5 buttons. Your car don't even have 5 buttons, right? Speaking of, I told you I had to buy a car recently that I was pissed about because I did not want to buy one. I didn't want a car payment. Anyway, I didn't read my full manual about the car, and so I kept thinking something was wrong with the car, because if I got too close to the lane, it would kind of pull back over. And I'm like, but I thought it was still my steering wheel. And then I went to the dealership like, hey, I just want to make sure everything's right with my steering and stuff, because sometimes I feel like my car is jerking. He's like, oh, your car has like a detection system where if you get too close to like the line, it pulls you back over. I was like, oh. And I'm a good driver, by the way, so don't act like I don't know how to drive, okay? But I was like, oh, I was just playing, y'all. I just want to make sure y'all knew how y'all cars work. This was a test, all right? I'm with the media. We're doing an investigation on car dealerships and seeing if y'all are giving us the right information. I was like, let me take my crazy behind out of here with this car, embarrassing myself. But yeah, anyway. Okay, let's talk this Billboard list. I'm going to pull it up. Let's see. By the way, I'm not really pressed about these lists because they kind of like whatchamacallit. They it's just a crew of people that work in the office that get together and have a conversation to make these lists. But because everybody's been arguing about them, I'm like, all right, let me see here. Let's see, Billboard, and this was like the list of R&B greatest singers, I believe. Where's my list? Give me the official list, please. Okay, here we go. This is not every. What is the worst? Give me the whole thing. All right, they're pissing me off. Hold on. I was supposed to have this together before I started. That's the 70s. Oh, it was 75 greatest. Why am I looking for 100 and they're not 100? All right, so this again was the greatest. Well, see where they messed up is they called it like the greatest R&B singers of all time. That already kind of messed it up because when you hear singers, you're thinking vocal ability, right? It should have just been R&B artists of all time because that's really technically what it was. But anyway, here's the list. 75 was Ruth Brown, 74 Summer Walker, 73 Etta James, 72 Jackie Wilson, 71 Keisha Cole, 70 Her, 69 Bobby Womack, 68 Phyllis Hyman, 67 Tank, 66 Keith Sweat, 65 Tina Marie, 64 Lettucey, 63 Music Soul Child, 62 Anthony Hamilton, 61 Ashanti, and 60 Neil. All right, people, what are your thoughts here? Because everybody was arguing in the chats. This is your opportunity. I will say out of this list here, Etta James is sitting a little too low for my liking. She's sitting way too low. Yeah, Etta James is a little too low for me. By the way, this list also was missing a few people. I'll come back to that in a second. Let me write that person down. Okay, so let's see. Y'all said somebody put a question mark Ashanti. Yeah, Ashanti was 61. Tina Marie, somebody said Tina Marie was too low. Tina Marie was at 65. Oh damn, y'all are whacking these people. Keith Sweat, Tank, and Ashanti should not be there. Okay. Going to the next segment. All right, this is number 59 through 44. They had Fantasia at 59, which to me I thought was way too low. People Bryson at 58, Tevin Campbell at 57, Joe, y'all know he is my favorite male vocalist and one of my favorite R&B singers. They had him at 56. Natalie Cole, 55. Jasmine Sullivan, 54. Jill Scott, 53. Stephanie Mills, 52. Rick James, 51. John Legend, 50. Bobby Brown at 49. Lauryn Hill at 48. The Weeknd at 47. Rihanna at 46. D'Angelo at 45. And SZA at 44. Out of this, The Weeknd, I consider The Weeknd a pop artist. I don't consider him R&B. I think they put him in the R&B bubble because he happens to be black. But to me, I've never associated his sound with R&B. I've associated his sound as like a fusion of hip hop and pop. That's me personally. So I wouldn't have had The Weeknd this high on that list. Like I would have not had The Weeknd above, I wouldn't have had The Weeknd above Etta James or Jackie Wilson. He wouldn't have been above Keisha Cole. But I guess if you're talking Billboard success and everything, I guess that might give him some element of ranking because he does do very well. I don't. They even have him above Neo. And I know Neo kind of fell off hard, but Neo did have a moment where he was kind of running things for a good minute. They even have him above Tevin Campbell. When I think of R&B, I'm going to think of Tevin Campbell before I think of The Weeknd. Let's see. Let's see what we got on here. You guys were saying Tank over Etta James. 68 Phyllis Hyman. I think the only reason, this is not by voice. This is by just what they feel that their impact in music is. Phyllis Hyman is a favorite of mine. I do acknowledge that during the majority of her career, she never really quite blew up, but she became somebody that was loved a little bit later down the line, and I think people appreciated her work then. So I was just happy she was on the list because she often gets left out of the conversation. Let's see. Jasmine Sullivan and Jill Scott should be higher. I agree, especially about Jill Scott. I thought Fantasia was too low as well. Somebody said old school Weeknd is R&B. I guess if you count like Lovin' the Crew, that kind of song, I guess. Somebody said people always get so mad over these lists. It's just another opinion that doesn't hold any weight. That's why I ain't got too much smoke about it. I'm just enjoying it for the entertainment. Like I said, it's probably a group of like 10 people that got in a room together and made their list. Let's see. So that's that. Because like I said, they specifically said that the list was not based on vocal skill. It was a few things. So that's why I said they should have just called it R&B artists instead of singers. Again, when I hear singer, I think of vocalist right away. Like when I hear singer, I'm thinking all the ones who are going to sing under the table. There's a huge difference between R&B singer, R&B artist, right? Anyway, next list. This is 43 through 28. You got Dionne Warwick at 43, Barry White at 42, Brandy at 41, Aaliyah at 40, Roberta Flack at 39, Maxwell at 38, Frank Ocean at 37, Toni Braxton at 36, Babyface at 35, Donna Summer at 34, Alicia Keys 33, Lionel Richie 32, Anita Baker 31, Gladys Knight 30, Diana Ross 29, Erykah Badu 28. Now, I do think this is a great list of artists. I still say the numbers are a little awkward. And this is where I got confused because Monica was not on this list at all. And I figured they would have Monica somewhere in the same mix around Brandy and Aaliyah. And I was like, interesting. On this list here, if I could change things around, respect to Lionel Richie, but I would move him down a little bit. Because when Lionel Richie was really jumping as a solo artist, if you're not including his work with the Commodores, he was more so easy listening adult contemporary pop. I wouldn't even really put him in the R&B box like that in that moment. Frank Ocean, I'm cool with, but I think people give him a whole lot. I'd move Frank Ocean. He wouldn't even have been in this cohort. He might have been in 2 cohorts before. That's just me. All right, let's see where we're at. And again, Miguel was also not on this list. I would have traded Frank Ocean for Miguel, if anything. Let's see. Somebody said, please grab the camera for a Lamar Jackson edit. Somebody said Leah should be lower. Oh Lord. Oh, I'm not doing that today. Okay. I just joined. What are we discussing? I'm reading this Billboard list of greatest R&B artists, right? Dark Titan says I put Lionel in R&B. I don't know what to do with him. Like I mean, I guess the song, Hello and yeah, they're R&B songs that there's his peak as a solo artist was that portion of the early 80s where if you still wanted to cross over, you had to go adult contemporary, easy listening, right? Because like I said, anything he released between about 81 to 84, you were never going to find a bass guitar in it. But out of respect for the elders, fine, we'll let him be R&B. Let's see. Okay, somebody said Brandy's a better vocalist than Monica. Okay, again, just based on what I read. Again, this is not centered on just singing. It's from what I read. Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I saw, they had like 5 components, and it was more so. It wasn't just singing is a piece of it, but it was like impact, chart success, where they fall in the musical conversation, which is why this list looks the way it is. Because if we're going by vocal ability, then a lot of these folks would have even been on the list, respectfully. And that definitely means, again, some of these folks, Lettucey, if we're going off vocal ability, Lettucey would have not been at the back of the list, right? Phyllis Hyman wouldn't have been at the back of the list. Fantasia wouldn't have been at the back of the list. Tevin Campbell and Joe and Natalie Cole would not be behind Frank Ocean. So I know this can't be centered on vocals if Frank Ocean is in front of all of them. And yeah, okay. All right. All right, next cohort. This is 27 through 12. 27, Shaka Khan. 26, Chris Brown. 25, Patti LaBelle. 24, Bill Withers. 23, Teddy Pendergrass. 22, Luther Vandross. 21, Donny Hathaway. 20, Otis Redding. 19, Smokey Robinson. 18, Al Green. 17, Janet Jackson. 16, Mary J. Blige. 15, Isaac Hayes. 14, Curtis Mayfield. 13, Sam Cooke. 12, Usher. See, this is why I know it can't just be vocals. Now, y'all know I love my fave, but when it comes to like vocals, I love, y'all know I go hard for some Janet Jackson. But if Janet Jackson is 17 on this list is not centered on only vocals, okay? And this is not saying that Janet does not carry a tune. Janet, to me, is a beautiful singer, has a beautiful light lyric, soprano voice. But singing-wise, vocally, she can't sit in a room with a lot of these folks. But I see her at 17 on this list because Janet, I think, has 16 number one R&B hits. If I'm correct, right? Massive success in both the R&B and pop world. That makes sense. Same for Mary J. Blige, who sits right in front of her at 16. I think Mary has a few more than Janet, but like these are two artists that have a huge plethora of R&B hits. So I'm like, this can't just be only vocals, because there's no way both of them would be in front of Shaka Khan, Patti LaBelle, Teddy Pendergrass, Luther Vandross, Donny Hathaway, Otis Redding. Yeah, so this is definitely more than just singing, and that's not me trying to whack them. I'm saying like clearly there's a bigger picture here. All right. Anyway, let's see. Luther is a little too low for me too. I think Luther should be a lot higher. But we are technically almost to the top 10 here. Somebody said Chris is too high. Savage said these lists are purely engagement or rage bait. Somebody said, what? Mary can't sing? I think Mary can sing. I just think Mary has a unique technique. It's not the most. She also doesn't have the. Her tone works for the emotion that's in her songs, right? It's not. It may not always be the prettiest, but I think it connects. This is why a lot of her songs really stick with a lot of folks. The Not Gonna Cries and the Take Me As I Am's really connect with folks because you hear the emotion there. I think that's what always made her do well. I have no smoke for Mary. I love Mary, so there's that. Alan says it best. She's a storyteller. All right. I do want to see the pictures of the people that were in this room voting. I want to see what they look like. Right. let me see something real quick. Okay, so that was that list. Okay, now we're getting to the. Where's the rest? Where's my top 10? Where's the top 10 at? Oh, that was 11, 12. Of course, this story don't even got everything. I see. Don't piss me off. All right. Okay, here we go. Here's the top 11. Correction. 11, Ray Charles. 10, Marvin Gaye. 9, R. Kelly. 8, Mariah Carey. 7, Prince. 6, James Brown. 5, Whitney Houston. 4, Beyonce. 3, Michael Jackson. 2, Aretha Franklin. 5, Stevie Wonder. Okay. I'm honestly not mad at anybody in that top 11, to be honest. I'd probably rearrange a few things. I figured Stevie, Aretha, or Whitney would be at the very top of that list. Okay. All right, let me see what you guys are thinking here. Let's see. Janet has limited vocal range, but can sing. Yeah, I think Janet can sing. I just, and I think she sings in a way that works for the kind of music that she makes. Like people be trying to laugh at her, but it's always interesting. I always watch people struggle to cover her music at the same time. We've seen many tributes where people have tried to sing her songs and didn't sound good, which is very interesting to me. Yeah, what works for her works with her. Let's see. And I like that she knows her lane. This is why when people be trying to whack Janet does not sign up to do nobody's national anthem. She does not sign up to be on anybody's charity song. When they get all the singers on the stage with a mic, she is not going to be there. She kind of knows her lane. She works within her spectrum of what she's comfortable doing, which is why I've always been like, she good with me. Now, we got some people who are non-singers who break their neck to be on every stage and be up there sounding like anything all the time. That's where I'll be looking at people crazy. But I will say, I think live, she's a lot more comfortable singing because she kind of doesn't dance as hard anymore. So she focuses. Like I enjoyed the last tour I went to and watching her sing some of Rhythm Nation live, right? I enjoyed watching that part, right? And so, yeah, anyway, moving on. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, Monica was missing from that list. The person that pissed me off the most that was not on the list, Faith Evans. I don't like that everybody plays in Faith Evans' face. Like Faith is one of my favorites as well. And I don't think she gets her flowers. And it makes me so mad because when Faith takes a song home, she takes a song home. How can we act like as soon as I get home is not a movement? Like, don't piss me off, man. Oh, that pisses me off. And she does great vocal arrangements. I know we always talk about like Brandy, Beyonce, and Janet when it comes to like vocal layering and stacking, but Faith is a member of that conversation as well. And I love that she is well studied from acts like the Clark sisters, and can just Faith has amazing vocal arrangements. So I'm pissed that Faith wasn't on the list. Anyway, yes, let's see. All right, you guys can start naming the people that they did not name because I know they skipped some people. Jaheim. Oh, Shantae Moore wasn't on it. Or Tamia. Yeah. Well, y'all didn't put Tamia on there, right? I figured they probably, you know what? Yeah, Shantae Moore, again, she doesn't get a lot of the, I think she's getting her flowers today in the last few years. She's one of my favorites as well. Like there's some, yeah, I think I have all her albums, every last one, you know, Precious and Love Supreme and This Moment Is Mine and Exposed and the ones that came out, like I got all her albums. She's not appreciated as much. I think people are finally giving her flowers though, but yeah, she went through the 90s kind of always not even being second tier to other artists, but being almost like third tier, which I think kind of sucked. Let's see. Somebody said a lot of people are delusional about their fave. That's all I'm gonna say. I hope that's not about Janet because I thought I was very fair to her. No, I was kidding. Let's see. Somebody said Lauryn Hill. Is she still considered R&B? She's in my top 5 artists of all time. I consider her. I think some artists fall in 2 categories. Like I think Lauryn Hill falls in hip hop and R&B. I think Whitney Houston falls in pop and R&B. Because I always say like somebody like Whitney Houston had best of both worlds. Same with Mariah Carey, pop and R&B. I throw Janet in there too. Some of them had the best of both worlds in different genres. Where we at here? Unpopular opinion, Aretha Franklin was yelling in her later years. I like early Aretha singing way more than later years. Well, I think that comes with just the aging, and she also smoked cigarettes. A lot of my favorite Aretha songs are from before she even at the whatchamacallit years. The when she was doing all the jazz standards. Is that the Columbia year? Before she got with Clyde, right? Before 1966. A lot of my favorite Aretha songs are from that era. So like her remake of oh my God, what is this song? Skylark, I think is a beautiful remake. I think that's the best rendition of that song ever. Go back and listen to her do Skylark. And it's just, I love that Aretha. I still like the Aretha with the hits too. Like some of my favorite songs like Call Me. What else? Do Right Woman is a great one. I like that one a lot. My mom used to play that all the time. What else? Young, Gifted, and Black is great. The Amazing Grace album is great. Even the later years, I thought her So Damn Happy album was a very, very nice R&B album. I want to say that's 2003. It had some great songs on there like Holding On. I think Mary J. Blige is on that song. Holding On, Wonderful, Good News. Everybody's Somebody's Fool, which she's been telling the story of my life for the last year. Like everybody is somebody's fool. So yeah, Aretha, yeah, much love to Aretha. Let's see. Oh, Maya wasn't on there either. Somebody said Faith has a beautiful voice that is so pleasing to the ears. This is why I like her song I Love You. It's a song that I can never play only once because I just love how pretty she sounds on here. I like play that song like 4 or 5 times in a row. It take me in my pocket. And it's crazy that J-Lo wrote that song. I'm like, damn, really? J-Lo wrote this? So okay. That's why when y'all be whacking J-Lo, I'm like, hold on, because she gave me one of my favorite Faith Evans songs, Time Out, on J-Lo. All right. I don't think Layla Hathaway on the list. I don't remember seeing her. I'm gonna be pissed. She definitely needs to be on there. To me, Layla Hathaway falls in the same category as Shantae Moore, where she just wasn't appreciated in the way that she should be. And she has some great ones too. My favorite Layla Hathaway song is this song she came out with, I want to say in like 2011, 2012, called Lie to Me. Very nice. I love that song. What else do I like? I like some of her early stuff. I liked even when she was trying to do her New Jack Swing songs, like Let Me Love You. I like Baby Don't Cry because Angela Winbush produced it. She has, of course, Everybody Loves Forever, For Always, For Love. And I'm Coming Back. She has some great ones. I like the collaboration she had with Kendrick Lamar. James Ingram was definitely snubbed. Yes, let us find 100 Ways. Stokely and John B. Stokely from In Condition. I see that. Angel Haven says Stevie. Oh yeah, look, like I said, y'all go to Angel Haven's channel because Angel Haven be having all the great throwback videos that we be missing from way back when, from all like the 2000s and 90s R&B artists. So definitely check out their channel. Yeah, I have no problem with the placement of Aretha and Stevie being 1 and 2. That's perfectly fine with me. Lenny Williams walks so Keith Sweat could run. Yes, Dionne Warwick was on the list, but they kind of had her. I think she was somewhere in the middle on the list, if I can remember. Dionne was number 43. Somebody said J-Lo writes. I mean, she writes. Her last album, I think she wrote everything on it. None of y'all listened to it, but I think she wrote it. Genuine wasn't on the list. You see, they play with Genuine too. Genuine had 4 platinum albums. See, y'all playing. All right. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, Rose is Still a Rose. I forgot about this song. I like that one too. Somebody said I would love for us to compromise our own list. We'd be on here all night fighting and arguing. We'd never get that list finished, and we still would have people missing. Because first of all, the list only has 75 people, right? So it's already, y'all could have put 25 more slots in there, but whatever. Somebody said Cisco needed to be on the list. Somebody said Donald Jones is not on the list. Stephanie Mills, I think Stephanie Mills was on there. Regina Bell wasn't though. Stephanie Mills was number 52. Somebody said Jesse Powell. They probably didn't put Jesse Powell in just because he probably didn't have a large enough catalog. But to be fair, he unfortunately is no longer with us, so he didn't even have the opportunity to give us more if he wanted to. Angel Havens, oh, this is interesting, said, well, if we're talking about singers outside of their prime, a lot of the top 10 would be questioned. I will not fight you on that because I 100% agree. Bilal was missing. Kiki Wyatt is missing. Nikki Gilbert. I think if Nikki Gilbert was going to be on the list, they would have just put Brownstone. Well, it is noticeable that there's not groups on here, right? It's all solo artists, so that's interesting. Kelly Price. Damn, we actually missing a couple people. Kelly Price. Okay, no Kelly Price. Maxwell's on the list. Wasn't he on the list? I know I saw him on here. Maxwell was a number. I know he was on here. Wait a minute. Hold on. Am I tripping? Was he not on? Hold on. Wait. Hold on. I gotta go back and look. Maybe he wasn't on the list. Oh no, he's number 38. I knew I wasn't tripping. Okay. I am not Morgan Simon. Calvin, who would be your top 10 R&B artists on impact, chart success, and who would be your top 10 for vocal? Oh, that's going to start a fight, man. Okay, if we're talking impact and R&B artists, okay, what I'm going to do, if I go that route, then I feel like I have to take off R&B artists that had pop crossover success. Otherwise, the list is not going to be fair. So that automatically means I have to take off Michael, I have to take off Prince, I have to take off Whitney, I have to take off Mariah, I have to take off Janet. You take them out of the picture. I'd also have to take off Dionne. If we're talking impact outside of the wait, I need a minute to sit with that. I don't know. Shit. Okay. Let me come back to you on that because maybe I don't need to take anybody out because a lot of these people still crossed over. I know at least I'll give you 3 definites that would be in my list. Let's do that. 3 definites that would be on my list if we're talking impact and we're talking R&B specifically. And I'm harping on R&B artists that may not have necessarily had the pop crossover, but really thrived in the R&B realm. I'm going to also include groups. Maze and Frankie Beverly would be in there. Marvin Gaye. And I'll do one more. I'm definitely going to say Shaka Khan. I'm going to stop there. If I'm only going on people who's like was locked into just R&B, maybe not had a lot of big pop crossover hits. Because once you put in those big crossover acts, it kind of changes the list. Because there's artists, like I said, like a Whitney or Mariah or a Michael or a Prince or a Janet who had the best of both worlds in both pop and R&B, where they can sit on both lists separately. That's a great question. Well, maybe we'll have maybe on the next live that I do that is only like entertainment related. We can really sit and saturate in this. But let's see here. Let's see. Anyway, who do we have here? Let's see. Oh, Calvin Richardson. I forgot about them. Tracy Spencer, somebody says Shanice. Oh, don't worry. I got the spammer out of there. They were doing too much. I know y'all didn't say Ray J. He don't need to be on the list. Ray J does not need to be on anything. I'm sorry. I'm very fair and try not to whack nobody, but Ray J to me is a no. I don't think he can sing either. I'm sorry. One Wish sounds horrible every time I hear it. I don't know how y'all let that slide. I will let him have Girl, You're What I Need, and I will let him have That's Why I Lie, but Ray J doesn't even take his craft seriously, so I would not even fight for him. Selena Johnson, yes. Yeah, Jump to It from Aretha. That's a fun favorite one. Yeah, I love that song. Luther put his foot in that one. Oh, Gerald Levert. What were they doing? Where's Gerald? Like, that just pissed me off thinking about it. Somebody said, what number was Sade? Was Sade on the list? I don't think they were on the list. They weren't. Nope. Nothing can come between us. Maxwell's on the list. He's number 38. Pebbles. I mean, if it was like 120 list, yeah, maybe Pebbles can go in there. Karen White missing, yeah. Karen White had a nice run. Actually, I'm not gonna knock Pebbles. Well, Pebbles had some hits. Mercedes, Girlfriend, Love Makes You Do Things, Giving You the Benefit. I'm trying to think what else she got. She had a few songs. Stay With Me Forever song? She had a few. Coco SWV sings down. That girl knows she can sing. It was just her birthday the other day. Michelle A. The only reason I wouldn't put Michelle A is because she only had one album. She didn't really, I don't know. I think Michelle A is a wonderful singer. I think she sounds amazing on Something in My Heart and Keep Watching and Nicety and No More Lies, but she really just had that one project. The only other thing I could think of her is being on the one song Let's Play House. Remember the rap song Let's Play House? And it had like the same melody as London Bridge is Falling Down. I don't know if you remember that song. It's like 94, 95. Yeah, she just didn't do enough music. I don't think so. I don't think that would put her on the list. Jody Watley. I feel like Jody be getting mad when you call her R&B. She wants to be seen as pop and dance. She be cussing folks out. You call her R&B. I don't think Johnny Gill is not on there. They didn't have groups. It was all solo artists. So I think when you add groups into the conversation, that really changes the narrative. Because now if you're doing groups, you really got to put a whole lot of man. Oh, because Shirley Murdoch is not on that. Well, I guess if I just made this argument about Michelle A, Shirley Murdoch would fall in that same boat. But yeah, there's some folks that were not on the list. But if we're talking groups, right? Where do we go? Who do we go with? You got the Bars. You got Jodeci. You got Boyz II Men. After 7. If we just we'll start with the guy groups. And After 7. Drew Hill. I'm thinking of groups that had Blackstreet, Guy, Troop, Surface, and that's just the guy groups. And I know I'm skipping some people, maybe even Ready for the World. If you're talking girl groups, man, we'll be here all day because you got like Mary Jane Girls didn't have a lot of music, but Mary Jane Girls, SWV, Escape, TLC, En Vogue, then you got Changing Faces, you got Total, you got 702, you have Cut Close, you have we'd be here all day once you start adding the groups. Silk, Shy, Babyface was on the list. Jennifer Hudson missing. That's an interesting. If it were vocals, yes. Hits. She had Spotlight. She had We Gonna fight, and if this isn't love, she could kind of go on there, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Somebody said Nivea. Angela Winbush I would throw on there. I think what works against some of the people is that some people, unfortunately, just because they had crappy labels, they only got to release one project or two, or maybe a project was shelved. Like Tweet is one of my favorite artists, but Tweet only has 3 albums. And so she's not going to be in the conversation, unfortunately. Like, yeah. Oh, Slave, yeah. Just a touch of love, right? Just a touch of love, a little bit. Oh, Freddie Jackson's not on the list, and he had a bunch of Rock Me Tonight, You Are My Lady. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Avant would fall in that same issue as far as like, actually, he had a couple projects. I feel like you got to make tiers of this. You got to make like 3 different lists. You got to make the commercial list. You got to make the list of people that really thrive specifically in just the R&B section. You got to make the list of just the actual singers. You got to make the list of the list that includes groups. Like, we'd be here all day. Kim, Eric Benet, Melissa Morgan. I love her and Kashif's remake of Love Changes. That is one of the best vocals out there. And she also has a really good remake of Prince's Do Me Baby. Like, man, yeah, she sings down. Jeffrey Osborne, another great one. Kenny Lattimore is one of my favorites as well. I enjoy him and Shantae Moore's remake of Minnie Riperton's Here We Go, because Kenny takes that song to the next level. He just brings it home. Excellent vocalist. Let's see. Ray Parker Jr. Wait, now I'm thinking of Ghostbusters. All right, we gotta wrap up. Y'all need to go to bed, and I still have to put the timestamps once we close out. Anyway, this has been good. For those who keep asking about the podcast, you will have your podcast episode this week, so no worries. I made sure to have it ready for you before I run to Jamaica. So yes, I know it's been like 4 months, but yeah, I had to make sure I had the story right because it gets kind of sad. So and I try to keep it happy. So that comes out, I want to say Thursday night, or maybe I have it set to come Friday morning. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, I'm back in July. So do not expect to hear from me between the 27th and the 3rd. I ain't here. So whatever happens in the world, don't be Galvin, where were you? I wasn't here. I was not here. I was trying to not stress out about the world. I was eating street fish and jerk chicken. Okay. All right. And yeah, I'll try to make up for our lack of content in June for July. How about that? Anyway, this is really cool. We'll see how all this unfolds. God, I'm just annoyed with everything going on in the world. I'm like, why we just can't all just live in like a world? Life is not supposed to be this difficult. It ain't supposed to be at all, right? But that's that. Anyway, I'm out. Share your 2 cents, and remember to mind your business so that you can age well, stay safe, stay sane. And I will see you guys on whatever the next video or whatever else is. Oh, and as far as the podcast, how I normally do it, I upload my new episode to the streaming services, and then I tend to upload an older episode on the YouTube channel. So for those who already know this and see the YouTube upload, don't be like, we already got this one. Go to the streaming service to get the latest episode. And then normally after it's ran its course on the streaming services, the episodes find their way on the channel. All right. Anyway, I'm out, guys. Good night.